Chapter 748. In the end, Gohan still did not know what sin the old man was talking about. But there was no doubt that the Wu-Tang lineage had reached its final, desperate state. This stubborn little boy named Xiao Hai had become the last successor of the Wu-Tang lineage. "Do you really not need my help?" Gohan stood at the door of little Hai's room, looking at the little boy who was immersed in sorrow, but was filled with determination. For the first time, she asked a question, wanting to take the initiative to help this child. Gohan saw himself in the child. 12 years ago, he had also stood up strong after losing his parents and sister. That was how he got to where he was today. Gohan seemed to see the shadow of himself from 12 years ago in the child. "No need. My Wu-Tang lineage relies on ourselves in everything we do. We definitely do not need the help of hypocrites like you." For some reason, the child was always filled with hostility towards Gohan, as if Gohan was the murderer who had destroyed his family. "Then what do you plan to do with these things?" Gohan looked at the various treasures in the room, and could not help but ask worriedly. Xiao Hai was only a child of 7 or 8 years old. Whether or not he could support himself was already a problem, let alone protect these precious scriptures. Gohan was worried that not only would these scriptures not become Xiao Hai's wealth, but they would also become a source of danger for him. If someone found out that he had so many treasures hidden in his house, he might not be able to keep his life. "What? Is it not enough to take my family's promissory note? You want to take away our scriptures?" Xiao Hai sneered. "I am the Wu-Tang sect leader now. If you want our Wu-Tang sect scriptures, then kill me. As long as you kill me, all these things will be yours." "Forget it. You're on your own. If you have any problems, you can come to me. If I can help you, I will definitely help you." In the face of such a stubborn child, Gohan didn't want to interfere. He casually wrote a note with his contact number on it and placed it on the table. Then he greedily left little Hai's house with the note. As little C watched Gohan leave, the stubborn little C seemed to suddenly lose the strength to support herself. She slumped to the ground, holding her head and crying for a long time before standing up again. He walked to the side of the table and picked up the note that Gohan had left behind. He roughly glanced at the contact number on the note and tore it into pieces. That night, everyone on the street knew that the last elder of the last swordsman family had passed away. Their grandson went to the council the next day and moved to a new house in the second ring. Then, he quickly left the street and the core area. No one knew where he had moved to. Unexpectedly, after 3 days, Gohan had no choice but to return to the Flowing Year Mountains entrance. Even the 2 guards at the entrance were a little surprised to see him. They didn't know why he came back. However, this time, Gohan didn't enjoy the sumptuous reception like the last time. He registered at the entrance, and the guard reported to the higher-ups. Soon, news came that Gohan was allowed to go up the mountain. However, the person who received Gohan in this life was not fleeting wooden fish, but a man who looked a little dispirited. Although he was dressed very well, Gohan could feel a sense of dispiritedness from his body. Gohan couldn't feel any liveliness that a normal person should have. If not for the fact that Gohan had seen him in photos countless times, Gohan would never believe that the man in front of him was the current head of the Flowing Year family, Liu Nianling's biological father. According to Liu Nianling, her father was still fighting in Moscow when Gohan arrived 3 days ago. Who would have thought that he would be able to return to Yanjing City in just 3 days? Only Jiandi was capable of such speed. "Why are you looking for us?" Fleeting Wooden Fish asked weakly. "Didn't you reject my father's offer? Why are you looking for us?" For some reason, Gohan could sense a hint of happiness in Fleeting Time's expression when he spoke, as if he had benefited from his rejection of Fleeting Time's wooden fish. "It's like this. I was lucky this morning, and I found this IOU. I wonder if the Flowing Year family will accept it?" Gohan placed the IOU in front of Fleeting Wooden Fish. "What a joke. We've always been the ones borrowing from others. Why would the Flowing Year family borrow from others?" Fleeting wooden fish finally showed a hint of liveliness when he heard Gohan's words. His liveliness was quickly replaced by shock. Where did you get this IOU from? Fleeting wooden fish asked excitedly. A poor child gave it to me. It seems that the flowing year family knows about this IOU. A smile appeared on Gohan's face. He could tell from Fleeting Time's excited expression that the IOU was genuine. So the Wu-Tang clan is still alive. Tell me, where are the members of the Wu-Tang clan? I want you to tell me right now. Fleeting wooden fish was agitated. It was as if he was desperate to find the successor of the Wu-Tang clan. I don't know. And even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. Gohan replied coldly. Although no one had spoken ill of the Flowing Year family for the past 1,000 years, and no one had ever heard of their misdeeds, only the heavens knew what was going on. Even someone like Wang Jingwei, who had died a horrible death, had been turned into a good person by someone, let alone the Lun Yen family, who was still the leader of the entire world and vaguely controlled the highest authority of the human race. Fleeting Time was stunned for a moment before he finally calmed down and sat down in front of Gohan with a straight face. Aren't you afraid that I'll take this IOU from you? Fleeting wooden fish suddenly asked. This is the Flowing Year family. With a single thought, this IOU will never exist. No one will know that you've been to the Flowing Year family and went missing. I know. Gohan nodded with a smile. That's why I bet. I bet that the Flowing Year family is the pillar of humanity, the future of humanity, and the conscience of humanity. Since the Flowing Year family is the conscience of humanity, they will not take this IOU from me. You have a glib tongue. I really don't know why Ling would fall for someone like you. The way Fleeting Time looked at Gohan was like how a mother-in-law would look at her son-in-law. Wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Forget it, I'll let the mother-in-law look at her son-in-law then. It's a pretty good description. Since you're giving me this IOU, you must want something from me. Tell me, what do you want from the Flowing Year family? Fleeting wooden fish did not wait for Gohan to speak. I remember now. My dad told me that you want to sever your hair, right? Very well. I'll take charge of this matter. I'll give you the severed black hair. Take it and leave quickly. If you're too late, you won't be able to take it when my dad returns. With that, Fleeting wooden fish took out the Green Slayer from his dimensional pocket. It appeared that he had been keeping the Green Slayer in his dimensional pocket all this time, as if he was prepared to give it to Gohan. However, it seemed like Fleeting wooden fish was not at home at the moment. It was precisely because Fleeting wooden fish was not at home that Fleeting wooden fish was able to make the decision. If not, Gohan would still have to deal with the cunning Fleeting wooden fish. Master, you're wrong. Sever my hair was very important to me 3 days ago, but it no longer holds any meaning to me after 3 days. I no longer need it, said Gohan. The reason why Gohan needed the Green Slayer so badly was because he wanted to use it to sever the Juzi sword so that he could synchronize with the King of Yu's Gojian sword. However, according to the current plan, the King of Yu would be reborn into the body of an ancient sword maiden. When that time came, Gohan would no longer need to sever the Juzi sword, but the ancient sword Chinpin sword. What kind of joke was this? The Juzi sword gritted its teeth and gave up. There was not much emotion in it anyway. However, how could Gohan give up on the Chinpin sword? To be honest, if Gohan had to choose between the Chinpin sword and the King of Yu's sword, the Chinpin sword would have a higher chance of winning. Fortunately, Gohan did not need to sever the sword mark between himself and the Chinpin sword. This was because the ancient sword maiden that was born after the King of Yu's rebirth was a sword maiden without the original wielder. At the same time, the King of Yu's soul was connected to Gohan's soul. Therefore, Gohan could use the sword maiden grafting technique to make the reborn King of Yu his own sword maiden. When that time came, Gohan would only need to use the yin-yang swordplay technique again to make the reborn King of Yu and Chinpin happy together, just like the relationship between Yi Tian and Du. Therefore, even if the green sever sword was given to Gohan for free, Gohan would not even spare it a glance. No matter which sword maiden it was, Gohan could not bear to kill her. The green sever sword was no longer attractive to Gohan. You don't want it any more? Fleeting Time looked at Gohan suspiciously, then pushed the green sever sword to the side and said after a moment of silence, "You brat, don't tell me you're still thinking about my Ling. Let me tell you, even if my dad doesn't reject you, I won't allow you to be with Ling. Ling is not good enough for you. Just give up." What did Fleeting Time mean? What did he mean by Gohan is thinking about Ling? What did he mean by Ling is not good enough for Gohan? Who is the daughter of the #1 aristocratic family? Chapter 749. Don't worry, Master Lunyan. I have no ulterior motives towards Miss Ling. I'm here with this promissory note in hopes of obtaining the Emperor's blood. Gohan decided not to waste any more time with Fleeting Time, so he revealed his true purpose of coming here. Emperor's blood? What do you want that for? Are you planning to go somewhere dangerous? Fleeting Time let out a sigh of relief when he heard that Gohan was not here for his daughter. You brat, you have no conscience at all. You're not here for Rinrin. You're not here for Rinrin. There was a hint of disappointment in Fleeting Time's voice. Why did it feel like Fleeting Time was hoping that Gohan would take Liunian Ling away? How many drops of Emperor's blood do you want? Will 1,000 drops be enough? It's enough for you to die 1,000 times over. Fleeting Time said generously, as if giving Gohan 1,000 drops of Emperor's blood was a generous thing to do. It's not enough. It's not enough. Master Lunyan, please speak with your conscience. Is 1,000 drops of Emperor's blood worth the powder of a 6 revolutions pill? Gohan retorted. A cubic meter of Emperor's blood could be divided into 20 drops. 1,000 drops of Emperor's blood was only equivalent to 50 cubic meters. It was a drop in the ocean for Gohan. About that, Fleeting Time was clearly not a liar. He knew better than anyone else the miraculous effects of a 6 revolutions immortal pill. It was too stingy to trade 1,000 drops of Monarch's blood for a single 6 revolutions immortal pill. I'll make it 500 cubic centimeters then, Fleeting Time said through gritted teeth. He was afraid that Gohan did not understand the exact content of 500 cubic centimeters, so he added, "A cubic meter is equivalent to 20 drops of Emperor's blood. My 500 cubic centimeters is equivalent to 10,000 drops of Emperor's blood. I'll give you 10 times that amount." 10 times is not enough. Gohan frowned. Master Lunyan, I can't be bothered to beat around the bush. I want 20 times the amount. 20 times. Let me think about it. No problem. 1,000 cubic centimeters of Sovereign's blood, it's decided. Fleeting Time answered without hesitation. Sigh, Comrade Gohan, you have no idea how important this 1,000 cubic centimeters is to the Fleeting Time clan. It's equivalent to half of our clan's inventory. It'll take us 500 years to replenish it. Fleeting Time actually began to complain to Gohan about how poor he was. Patriarch Lunyan, I don't think you understand what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that I'm going to increase it by 20 times. In other words, I'm going to increase it by 20 times from 500 cubic centimeters, not 50 cubic centimeters. Gohan did not give Fleeting Time the chance to continue his act. He immediately told Fleeting Time the amount he needed. On the base of 500 cubic centimeters, increase it by 20 times. 10,000 cubic centimeters. Even with the wealth of the Fleeting Time clan could not afford the amount that Gohan was asking for. That's impossible. You're asking for too much. Do you think the Fleeting Time clan is a tycoon? We won't be able to withdraw such a huge amount even if we empty out our entire storage. Young man, don't be too greedy. Do you really think the Fleeting Time clan is rich? Fleeting Time clan said angrily. Patriarch, I, Gohan, never ask for more than a cent from others. What's mine is mine. Are you telling me that 3 6 revolutions pills are not worth 10,000 cubic centimeters of imperial blood? Gohan retorted. A 6 revolutions pill is a super treasure that can turn an ordinary person into an immortal sword wielder. Even so, it's still not worth it. That's 10,000 cubic centimeters of imperial blood. How can 3 6 revolutions pills compare to that? Fleeting Time Clan snorted. I admit that the 6 revolutions pill is miraculous and can create an immortal sword wielder. However, the sword bearer must be a disciple of the Run school, or else this 6 cycles celestial pill will turn from a divine medicine to a poison. To most people, this 6 cycles celestial pill is even worse than trash. You want to use something like this to exchange for our Lun Yen family's 10,000 cubic centimeters of sovereign blood? Alright. Since Patriarch Lun Yen said that 3 6 revolutions immortal pills are not worth 10,000 cubic centimeters of sovereign blood, may I ask how much sovereign blood a single 6 revolutions immortal pill is worth? Please give me a clear price, Patriarch Lun Yen. Then I'll give you a price. 300 years ago, a 6 revolutions pill was auctioned off at the Soaring Dragon auction. In the end, it was exchanged for a Duke dimensional crystal. If you hand over a Duke-type dimensional crystal to the Sword Committee Association, you will receive 40 million hero coins, and the exchange price for 1 cubic centimeter of sovereign blood is 100,000 hero coins. Therefore, a 6 revolutions pill is worth 400 cubic centimeters of imperial blood. Since the Blood Moon Patriarch owes you 3 6 revolutions pills, I'll give you 1,200 cubic centimeters of imperial blood. After a long discussion, Fleeting Time finally calculated the price of the 6 revolutions immortal pill for the sovereign blood. At first glance, it sounded like a very fair calculation. It was still the price from the auction. When it came to auctions, people would naturally think that it was a way to maximize the value of an item. The best way to reflect the value of an item was through auctions. Therefore, the price was very fair. But in reality, Fleeting Time had secretly hidden an inconspicuous trap in his word. That was, a Duke dimensional crystal was worth 40 million hero coins. It was true that a Duke dimensional crystal was worth 40 million hero coins. However, this 40 million hero coins was the purchasing price of the Sword Committee, not the exchange price. Apart from ordinary people with no ability, anyone who would sell it to the Sword Committee at such a price would be a complete idiot. What a joke! A Duke dimensional crystal was already worth 90 million hero coins in the black market. Who would sell it to the Sword Committee for 40 million hero coins? However, the Sword Committee was selling it for 100,000 hero coins. The Sword Committee had placed it in the mission exchange, and it could be bought with 100,000 hero coins. There had never been a shortage of it. However, this was only a loophole in the price. More importantly, the price of this 6 revolutions immortal pill was 300 years ago. Today, 300 years later, there was still an endless supply of sovereign bloodlines. Even though the production of Commandery King seeds was much less than 300 years ago, 6 revolution celestial pills had completely disappeared. Even if you had money, you would not be able to buy one. Gohan believed that if he were to auction a 6 revolutions pill at the Dragon Ascension auction now, the price would at least double. Although Gohan knew that Lun Yen's calculation method had given him a huge advantage, he did not want to continue arguing with him. Because in the absence of an absolutely fair reference, arguing over the price of an item would never yield a conclusion. Alright. Family head Lun Yen, you have a point. I, Gohan, am convinced. We'll go according to the price you mentioned. A 6 revolutions pill is equivalent to 400 cubic centimeters of imperial blood, and these 3 6 revolutions pills are equivalent to 1,200 cubic centimeters of imperial blood. Gohan said with a pained expression. At least you know your stuff. I've already calculated it for you. Lun Yen nodded in satisfaction. Then I'll confirm with family head one last time. A 6 revolutions pill is equivalent to 400 cubic centimeters of imperial blood, right? Guhan suddenly asked again in a serious tone. That's right. That's the price. Lu Nian nodded solemnly. You're not going to change it? Fair trade? Heaven and earth as witness? Sun and moon as witness? Swear on the honor of the Lu Nian clan? A 6 revolutions pill is equivalent to 400 cubic centimeters of imperial blood? Is there something wrong with you? Do you have to repeat it so many times? Lu Nian glared at Guhan in dissatisfaction. My Lu Nian clan has always been a man of his word. I've said that this is the price, and this is the price. Heaven and earth as witness, sun and moon as witness. I swear on the honor of the Lu Nian clan that this is the price. Since that's the case, I have nothing else to say. The Lu Nian clan is truly the fairest clan in the world. I, Guhan, am utterly impressed. Guhan finally said sincerely. Fleeting Zheng heaved a sigh of relief when the price was finally set. Since the price has been set, this IOU is useless to me. Shall I tear it up now? He said as he picked up the promissory note. Go ahead. Guhan waved his hand. This receipt has already been returned to the Lu Nian clan. It's yours now. Good. 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 Fleeting Time said, and with a wave of his sword aura, the IOU slip was reduced to dust. Unless time was reversed, no one would be able to repair the IOU slip. Comrade Guhan, please wait here for a moment. I'll go get you 1,200 cubic centimeters of imperial blood right now. Lu Nian was about to get up to retrieve the imperial blood for Guhan. Wait! Guhan suddenly spoke up. You're wrong. It's not 1,200 cubic centimeters. It's 12,000 cubic centimeters of imperial blood. Lu Nianzheng's face immediately turned the color of a pig's liver. He glared at Guhan viciously. Lad, although our Lu Nian clan values justice, fairness, and benevolence, we do not dare to offend you. However, we will not allow anyone to toy with us. You can either scram after you get the 1,200 cubic centimeters of imperial blood, or scram right now. What's the meaning of this? Is the Lu Nian clan going to go back on their word? Are you going to disregard the price we agreed on? Guhan retorted. We've agreed on a price of 400 cubic centimeters, not 4,000 cubic centimeters. Are you going to deny it? Fleeting Time continued to rage. That's right. I admit that it's 400 cubic centimeters. Heaven and earth are my witnesses, and the sun and moon are my witnesses. Guhan repeated mischievously, leaving Fleeting Time confused. What's she trying to say? What's he trying to do? My apologies, Lord Lu Nian. I took the wrong IOU just now. That was an IOU that I made after I modified it with the quantum scanner. The real IOU is here. Guhan suddenly produced another receipt, and placed it in front of Fleeting Time. It was only then that Fleeting Time noticed that the new IOU was different from the previous one. It had the words 10 times written on it. Chapter 750. It was a trick that Guhan had used to lure his enemies into his trap. In the future 1,000 years from now, humans would be able to use quantum technology to create many unimaginable black technologies, such as quantum copying. Quantum copying was basically the process of making a complete copy of an item through quantum mimicry. Not only would the copied item be identical in every detail, it would even be able to replicate the age of the paper. If one were to take a piece of paper from 1,000 years ago and make a quantum copy of the paper, they would discover that the paper was also from 1,000 years ago. That was why Fleeting Time knew that it was Guhan's fault when he saw the paper. He took a quick look at the age of the paper, and after confirming that it was indeed from 700 years ago, he no longer doubted the authenticity of the IOU. Fleeting Time knew that his ancestor had left such a IOU for him, and it was clearly recorded in the family history of Fleeting Time's family. However, Fleeting Time's blood moon was careless when he wrote the family history, and did not complete the contents of the IOU. The IOU only stated that Fleeting Time had borrowed 3 6 Revolutions elixirs from the Wu-Tang Clan, and that if anyone were to approach Fleeting Time's family with this IOU, they would have to repay the IOU according to its contents without delay. The matter was kept a secret, and Fleeting Time believed that no one other than the Wu-Tang Clan would know about it. Naturally, it was impossible for the Wu-Tang Clan to forge the IOU. Besides, Fleeting Time's handwriting was extremely rare, and not something that could be easily replicated. Most importantly, Fleeting Time did not expect Gohan to deceive the Fleeting Time's family with a fake IOU. It had been centuries since anyone dared to deceive the Fleeting Time's family with a fake IOU, unless that person was tired of living. In fact, it was also very easy to distinguish the authenticity of things that were quantum copied. This was because there was a fatal flaw in the vicinity of quantum. That was, the copied thing only needed to be scanned by an electronic scanner to discover the quantum residue on the surface. How could one determine that it was a quantum copy? Once bitten, twice shy, Fleeting Time immediately brought Gohan to the appraisal room of the Fleeting Time family residence when Gohan took out the real IOU. He scanned the IOU with a quantum scanner a dozen times, and only after confirming that there was not a single quantum on the IOU was he able to verify the authenticity of the IOU. There was no doubt that the IOU was the real deal. It was also at this moment that Fleeting Time finally understood Gohan's scheme. The treacherous Gohan had first presented a fake IOU to Fleeting Time. Fleeting Time had repeatedly confirmed the price of the 6 Revolutions pill with Gohan, leading Fleeting Time to believe that Fleeting Time would only need to pay 1,200 cubic centimeters of Sovereign's blood. If Fleeting Time had known that the IOU would have to pay 10 times the price, he would never have agreed to the price of a 6 Revolutions pill that was equivalent to 400 cubic centimeters of Sovereign's blood. Now that the price had been confirmed, the Fleeting Time clan had to repay Gohan 12,000 cubic centimeters of Sovereign's blood to Fleeting Time. Fleeting Time was in so much pain that he wanted to knock himself out so that he could extricate himself from the awkward situation. That was 12,000 cubic centimeters of Sovereign's blood. Even Fleeting Time himself was not sure if the Fleeting Time clan had that much Sovereign's blood in their vault. No. You've lied to me about the price. I refuse to accept it. We must discuss the price again. Fleeting Time immediately changed his stance. Master Fleeting Time, I admit that I was wrong to lie to you with a fake IOU. However, I did not lie to you about the price. You were the one who calculated the price from the beginning. You compared the price of the Soaring Dragon auction, the Dungeon King's blood, and the heroes' coins of the Sword Committee. I did not say a single word. How can you say that I lied to you about the price? Gohan retorted. Fleeting Time wanted to slap himself when he heard Gohan's words. Why did I lie to you about the price of the 6 Revolutions pill? Now that I'm the one who set the price, there's nothing I can say to refute it. However, is he really going to pay Gohan 12,000 cubic centimeters of Sovereign's blood just like that? There was no way Fleeting Time clan would agree to that. He was even more unwilling to be a fool after he was deceived by the fake IOU. Fleeting Time clan and Gohan were in a stalemate. One side insisted that the price was not valid and demanded a recalculation. The other side repeated that the price was set by Fleeting Time clan himself. It was the most reasonable price, and there was no room for recalculation. The two of them quarreled for almost an hour. In order not to waste everyone's time, the dialogue of the quarrel was not written. Anyway, until the two of them were exhausted, the two sides still did not reach a compromise. What are you arguing about? What a scandal! Fleeting Wooden Fish, who had not been seen for a long time, walked into the room. Fleeting Time immediately stood up from his seat and gave way to Fleeting Time Wooden Fish to take his seat. Fleeting Time clan then whispered into Fleeting Time Wooden Fish's ear and recounted the entire process. What? 12,000 cc. Even a sly old fox like Fleeting Time Wooden Fish was shocked when he heard that there was 12,000 cubic centimeters of Sovereign's blood. Kid, where did you get the courage to ask for so much Sovereign's blood from the Fleeting Time clan? Fleeting Time Wooden Fish asked in an unfriendly tone. I don't need any courage. I only believe in one thing, Guhan replied calmly. What do you believe in? Fleeting Time Wooden Fish retorted. If you return what you borrowed, it won't be difficult to borrow again. Guhan enunciated each and every word clearly. It's not difficult to borrow again if you return what you borrowed. Fleeting Time Wooden Fish repeated the words 3 times. The dissatisfaction on his face gradually disappeared, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. Good. Well said, that was indeed the case. It's not difficult to borrow again if you return what you borrowed. Little Zheng, go to the treasury and retrieve 12,000 cubic centimeters of Sovereign's blood and hand it over to Brother Guhan. Unexpectedly, the arrival of Fleeting Time Wooden Fish had brought about a breakthrough. Once this old man opened his mouth, he would just go straight to the point. The 12,000 cubic centimeters of Sovereign's blood was given to Fleeting Time Wooden Fish. Yes, father. It was obvious that Fleeting Time was very obedient to his father. He immediately went to the family's treasury, and returned with a briefcase in hand to Guhan. Guhan opened the suitcase, and found that it was filled with liquid nitrogen. There were transparent test tubes in the liquid nitrogen, and every single one of them contained golden blood. Guhan took out one of the test tubes and took a sniff to confirm that it was indeed Sovereign's blood. Thank you, Fleeting Time Clan, for your generosity. Guhan placed the suitcase to the side, and bowed deeply to the displeased Fleeting Time Wooden Fish and Fleeting Time Wooden Fish. I know that I've been too rash this time. It's a little too much to ask for 12,000 cubic centimeters of Sovereign's blood with a lone slip. However, I can't do anything about it. I have things that I must do. This lowly one will never forget the Fleeting Time Clan's great kindness. If the Fleeting Time Clan has any requests in the future, this lowly one will do his best to repay the favor. This time, Guhan was speaking the truth. He had indeed taken advantage of the Fleeting Time Clan. Aside from the Fleeting Time Clan, there was probably no other clan in the world that would be willing to be taken advantage of by Guhan. Take the Emperor Sword families in Yuzhong City for example. Not to mention 1,200 cubic centimeters, they would probably think of a way to make Guhan disappear from this world without anyone knowing the moment Guhan took out the loan receipt. There's no need to be so polite. Feel free to look for us if you have any difficulties in the future. The Fleeting Time Clan will be more than happy to help. Fleeting Time Wooden Fish laughed and asked, When do you plan to activate the furnace of heaven and earth? Guhan was stunned. Senior Fleeting Time, how did you know that I'm going to activate the furnace of heaven and earth? Is it that hard to guess? For you to take away so much sovereign bloodline at once without caring about your face, you must be planning something big. In this world, the only thing that you can do that requires so much sovereign blood is probably the worldly furnace. I can even guess why you're activating the furnace of heaven and earth. Since you don't care about sever green hair anymore, it means that you don't want to cut off your sword mark anymore. Could it be that you want to forge a new sword, Maiden? Fleeting Time Wooden Fish suddenly asked. Forge a new sword, Maiden? A huge question mark flashed across Guhan's mind. From Fleeting Time Wooden Fish's words, could this furnace of heaven and earth have the ability to forge a new sword, Maiden? This was something that Guhan had never heard of before. Guhan had to get to the bottom of this. Senior Fleeting Time, what do you mean by forging a new sword, Maiden? Guhan asked urgently. You don't know? Fleeting Time Wooden Fish looked very surprised. Didn't you want my 12,000 cubic centimeters sovereign blood to forge a new sword, Maiden? Only a new sword, Maiden, requires more than 10,000 cubic centimeters of sovereign blood to activate the furnace of heaven and earth. If it's just a simple repair, A 4,000 cubic centimeters sovereign blood is enough. Guhan fell silent. He was afraid that Fleeting Time Wooden Fish would ask for the extra 8,000 cubic centimeters if he told him that it was for repair. Fortunately, Fleeting Time Wooden Fish did not bring up the topic again. Instead, he changed the topic to something else. Guhan, do you know the other important reason why this old man agreed to your request so readily? This lowly one does not know. Guhan replied honestly. Because even if you didn't activate the furnace of heaven and earth, I would have done so sooner or later. Fleeting Time Wooden Fish let out a long sigh. If I don't activate the furnace of heaven and earth soon, I'm afraid that Lena will not be able to live. Chapter 751. After a round of verbal sparring, Guhan finally left the Lunyen family with the 12,000 cubic centimeters of Emperor's blood. But when Guhan left, he left with a tail behind him, a silent and gloomy Reina Takasaka. As a condition for Guhan to take away the 12,000 cubic centimeters of sovereign blood, Guhan had to bring Reina Takasaka with him. According to Fleeting Wooden Fish's words, Reina Kosaka had to make a trip to the furnace of heaven and earth, or she would die for sure. Fleeting Time Wooden Fish did not explain the reason behind it, but Guhan could see that Fleeting Time's expression was as if his mother had just died. So be it. Guhan did not want to interfere with the Lunyen family's matters. After all, he was only bringing Reina Kosaka to the furnace of heaven and earth. It would not affect Guhan in any way, so there was no need to go against the Lunyen family's wishes. Unlike the last time when Guhan took a car to Yenjing City, the Lunyen family agreed to use their quantum teleportation circle to teleport Guhan. In the blink of an eye, Guhan and Reina Kosaka were back in Yenjing City. Knock knock. Song Yifei thought that it was Guhan's return when she heard the knocking on the door. She opened the door in surprise. It was Guhan. Unfortunately, Song Yifei's smile did not last for more than a few minutes. She saw a girl following behind Guhan. Who is this woman? Song Yifei took a good look at Reina Takasaka and realized that she was a woman that he had never seen before. She could not help but sigh bitterly in her heart. What did I do in my previous life? Why did I fall in love with a man like Guhan? In the blink of an eye, there's another woman in his harem. Why is my life so bitter? Yifei, don't get the wrong idea. I can't tell you the specifics, but I can assure you that I don't have that kind of relationship with this woman. Guhan seemed to have sensed Song Yifei's thoughts, so he added dryly. Is Guhan trying to explain himself to me? He was worried about my thoughts and was afraid that I would be jealous, so he explained it to me, right? That must be it. Women must be good at comforting themselves, just like Song Yifei. Just one explanation from Guhan was enough for her to imagine a lot of things, and she instantly became much happier. Guhan, wait a little longer. I'll be ready for dinner soon. You and Miss Lena can have a taste of my cooking. Every time Guhan appeared in front of her, Song Yifei couldn't help promoting her cooking skills, as if it was the only thing she could show to Guhan. Although in fact, cooking was the only thing she could show to Guhan. That's not it. I won't be able to eat your cooking this time. Guhan began to quickly pack up his personal belongings in the room. I have a very urgent matter now. I have to go out immediately. I see. Song Yifei's face was a little gloomy, but she immediately forced a smile and said, It doesn't matter. I'll heat it up for you. You can eat it later. No. I'm afraid I can't come back tonight. In fact, I don't know when I can come back. I'll try to come back before the Octagon Assembly. You can spend the next few days with Lu Shihua. You two can also be companions. Guhan's flat answer made Song Yifei's mood fall to the bottom. She could only hear the sound of a string in her brain breaking. Get out. Get out of my sight right now. Song Yifei suddenly rushed to Guhan's side and kicked Guhan's butt, trying to kick Guhan out. However, how could Song Yifei compare with Guhan's reaction speed? Just as Song Yifei lifted her leg, Gu Han's hand reached behind him and directly grabbed Song Yifei's ankle. Then, he forcefully pulled her whole body into his embrace. "Wait for me. When I come back, I'll have a good meal with you." After saying this in a very domineering manner, Gohan gently placed Song Yifei on the sofa and then left Song Yifei's house with his Jianyo and Rina Kosaka. "Bastard! Who wants to eat with you? If you dare, don't ever come back to see me again." Gohan could hear Song Yifei's whining behind him, but he did not look back because turning back would not change anything. What a sinful man! When Gohan completely left Song Yifei's temporary residence, Rina Kosaka, who had been following behind Gohan without saying a word, suddenly said this sarcastically. "All of us are sinful. Otherwise, why are we still living in this world?" Gohan replied coldly and did not say another word. Rina Kosaka seemed to be too lazy to talk to Gohan anymore. The two of them walked forward in silence, and then got on the bus. After a while, Rina Kosaka found herself following Gohan to the front of a 4S shop. The 4S shop clerk, who was humming a tune, noticed someone entering the shop through the reflection on the ground. He immediately raised his head with a professional smile. Before he could say the word welcome, he was stunned. "You! It's you!" The 4S shop clerk was shocked to find that the person in front of him was none other than the super rich man who bought a Yenwang 3008 from him a few days ago. However, this rich man's behavior was a little too overbearing. He did not even complete the basic procedures and directly drove away. If he had not paid the money in advance, this unlucky clerk would definitely be fired by the boss. He might even have to bear a large debt. Fortunately, not only did Gohan not lose a cent, but he also earned a few million. Therefore, not only was the clerk not punished, but he was also rewarded by the manager. He was given a month's salary as a bonus, so he was beaming with joy. "Sir, what business do you have with us? Is there something wrong with that Yenwang 3008? You just need to tell us, and we'll fix it properly for you." The clerk snapped out of his daze and immediately stuck close to Gohan, serving Gohan well. This was a super rich man. Who knew? He might even buy a super hover sports car from him in the future. He could not afford to lose such a customer. Just as the shop assistant had expected, Gohan's first request was to buy another super hover sports car. Moreover, he wanted to buy another Yenwang 3008. This was something that couldn't be helped. If Gohan wanted to return to Yuzhong City, he would need a super hover car. Although there was still an hour before the super hover train to Yuzhong City left, it was not a problem for Gohan to take the armored hover train back. However, the commissioner of the Sword Committee, who was in charge of supervising the smelting of the broken sword lady, was also on the armored hover train. If he took the armored hover train, Gohan and the commissioner would arrive at Yuzhong City at the same time. If that happened, whether or not Gohan could get the broken sword lady before the commissioner was a huge risk. There was another problem. Although the armored hover train was safe, its speed was very slow. When Gohan came, it took him 7 days to reach Yenjing City. This round trip took 14 days, and he had to go to the furnace of heaven and earth in between. In this way, it was impossible for Gohan to make it to the 8 school assembly in 15 days. After all, Gohan had promised the Tiger's Roar Sword Spirit. At the same time, he was representing Yuzhong City. If he could not be absent, Gohan did not want to be absent. Therefore, Gohan had to go to Yuzhong City alone. That super hover sports car that was fast enough became Gohan's essential transportation tool. And Gohan's original Yenwang 3008 had been given to the Ministry of Transportation as a bargaining chip. Naturally, he did not have the face or the time to ask for it back. Fortunately, Gohan had a lot of money now. He could just spend some more money to buy another Yenwang 3008. However, when Gohan mentioned that he wanted to buy another Yenwang 3008, the shop assistant had a troubled look on his face. Their shop was located in a remote area, and their main customers could not afford such an expensive super hover sports car like the Yen Huang 3008. Therefore, their shop did not have long-term stock. The previous Yen Huang 3008 was just about to be delivered to the Yuzhong branch, so it was stored in their shop. Therefore, their shop no longer had a Yen Huang 3008. Even if Gohan had the money, he could not buy it. Immediately, Gohan suggested that they could lower the price and buy a slightly slower super hover sports car. However, the shop assistant helplessly said that the fastest maglev sports car in their shop did not exceed 1,500 kilometers per hour. Forget it. Looks like I have to make a trip back to the core area. Gohan was helpless. He could only make a trip back to the core area and buy a super hover sports car from the 4S shop. Seeing that his super rich customer was leaving, the shop assistant panicked. He hurriedly pulled Gohan's hand and said, "Sir, let me ask you one thing. Is it fine as long as it's a car that's fast enough?" "That's right. As long as it's fast enough, it's fine." Gohan nodded. "Then I'll bring you to a place. There will definitely be something that can satisfy your requirements. However, you must promise me that you will never mention that place to anyone else. Otherwise, I will not be able to keep my life." The shop assistant looked around cautiously, then whispered to Gohan. It was as if he really wanted to bring Gohan to a very mysterious place. "Lead the way." Gohan did not beat around the bush and said directly. Following the footsteps of the little shop assistant, Gohan walked all the way out. Finally, they left the 4th Ring Road and entered Yanjing City's 5th Ring Road. As mentioned before, Yanjing City's 5th Ring Road was not a residential area, but an industrial area. Therefore, there were almost no people in the 5th Ring Road. Even if there were people, they would stay in the factories. The streets were empty, and only a pedestrian could be seen every 10 minutes. Under the guidance of the shop assistant, after a series of turns, Gohan finally arrived at his destination. It was a place with a conspicuous sign that said, "Warehouse restricted, unauthorized persons not allowed." "Friend, what kind of car are you showing me? Why is it in such a secret place?" "Good car. Definitely a good car." The shop assistant shrunk his head. "That's prehistoric technology. I heard that it was invented by humans millions of years ago." Chapter 752. Prehistoric technology was not a new term to the general public or to Gohan. More than 300 years ago, a human named Jiandi fought with the desolate level Yuan Ko. They fought their way to a depth of more than 60 kilometers underground. Then, they discovered the ruins of a human civilization deep underground. It was called the Prehistoric Civilization No. 1 Ruins. At the same time, because the ruins were discovered in Australia, combined with the ancient legends of Australia, the civilization was named the Lemurian civilization. According to the little information that humans had left, the Lemurian civilization disappeared 60 million years ago. It was a super prehistoric civilization that was the closest to modern humans. The reason for its destruction was said to be an interplanetary war with the 10th planet of the solar system. The final result was the complete disappearance of the Lemurian civilization, and the 10th planet of the solar system was blown into dust by the Lemurian civilization's Q-bomb attack. Although the historians had always been full of doubts about this legend, because this legend did not come from any historical information, but from the writing of a web novel writer before the apocalypse. However, no matter how much the historians doubted this story, there was no doubt that before the emergence of this generation of human civilization, there was already a previous generation of human civilization, and the previous generation of human civilization was completely wiped out due to some tragic reason. This could not help but remind people of the situation of modern humans. Similarly, science had also developed to the peak of planetary civilization, the beginning of space civilization, and then humans encountered something like Yuan Ko. If it was not for the sudden appearance of the Sword Lady, perhaps humans would have long disappeared without a trace like the previous generation of civilization. Perhaps after another 60 million years, the next generation of humans would be able to discover how glorious the human civilization was through the underground ruins. At the beginning, the Sword Committee also wanted to hide this matter, but later on, for some reason, the Sword Committee suddenly changed their mind and began to publicize the matter of the prehistoric civilization. They even filmed more than a dozen documentaries about this matter, causing a period of prehistoric civilization fever. Without a doubt, the prehistoric civilization had helped mankind in many ways. Since the discovery of the prehistoric civilization's ruins, many relics of the prehistoric civilization had been excavated from the ruins. These relics included a large number of quantum technology and medical biotechnology. These technologies, after being improved and reset by human scientists, became a series of quantum technological products, such as quantum teleportation arrays, quantum photocopiers, quantum communication networks, and so on. Biomedical technology, on the other hand, evolved into the miraculous black technology that reconstructed severed limbs, regenerated bodies, super medical cabins, and so on, saving countless sword-bearers from the brink of death. Still, it was unusual that the Lemurian civilization only had quantum technology and biomedical technology, with no achievements in other areas. Some people would say that this was very normal. Different civilizations definitely had different strengths. This civilization was good at quantum technology and biomedical technology. So what if their other technologies were inferior? In this regard, Gohan expressed his doubts. Other technologies might indeed be inferior because of the characteristics of civilization. But as a super civilization that could wage war against another planet in the solar system, how could they not have outstanding space navigation technology? At the very least, it should be able to travel unimpeded in the solar system. However, after the discovery of the Lemurian civilization, mankind did not have any outstanding development in space technology. They only slowly advanced according to the technological level before the cataclysm, and only a few decades ago did they barely manage to build a forward base on the moon. The current human space technology was like the canoes of ancient times. It was the simplest and most inferior technology. Only God knew when they would be able to build a behemoth like an aircraft carrier that could travel unimpeded in the sea. So the Super Maglev flying car from the Lemurian civilization that the shop assistant mentioned had piqued Gohan's interest. According to the Sword Council, the Lemurian civilization did not include Maglev technology. When Gohan was still the Sword Garrett's master, he had also looked up information on the Lemurian civilization and found that there was no record of Maglev technology in the database. This was very interesting. Was the shop assistant making things up, or was the Sword Council lying? Even the Sword Garrett's master of Yuzhong City could not access this confidential information. Gohan was very interested. Not long after, Gohan saw the true appearance of this prehistoric Super Maglev flying car. The car sat quietly in the warehouse. Unlike what he had imagined, this flying car didn't have a heaven-shattering exterior design. It was just a smooth, droplet-shaped exterior that was extremely simple, resembling the style of a certain brand from before the Great Calamity called Apple. There were 3 or 4 guards standing around with guns slung over their shoulders looking at the Super Maglev flying car. The guards' eyes were unfocused. Although their limbs were full of muscles, they did not have a solid foundation. Even among ordinary humans, these guards were only slightly stronger than the average person. They were not elites. To be honest, Gohan did not care about such trash guards. Even if the guns on their backs ran out of bullets, they would not be able to pose a threat to Gohan. As a result, the defense of this super-hovering flying car was very lax. Not to mention a famed sword-tier swordsman like Gohan, even a normal ancient sword-tier swordsman might be able to steal this super-hovering flying car. Third brother, why are you here now? Don't you have work to do? A guard came up to greet him. Seeing Gohan being brought over by the shop assistant, He put on a look of realization. So you brought a customer here? That's right, that's right. This old man is a super tycoon. He paid the full amount of the yen, Huang 3008, without batting an eyelid. This old man said he wanted to buy a super maglev flying car that is faster than the yen Huang 3008, so I brought him here. The shop assistant said with a smile. Is that so? Did you report this to the boss? The guard asked again. I did. I already told the whole thing to Boss Chin, and he gave his approval. Otherwise, I would not have dared to bring someone here. The shop assistant laughed. How about it? Why don't you let this old man take a closer look at this maglev flying car? Take a closer look. The guard glared at the shop assistant and said carelessly, This is a flying car from the prehistoric civilization. How can it be casually looked at? It's not like you can't look at it if you want. Pay up 10,000 renminbi for a minute. These guards were indeed a motley crew. Other than money, there was nothing else in their eyes. They did not care about driving away their potential customers. Fortunately, Gu Han didn't care about this bit of money now. He simply took out his personal terminal and touched the guard's personal terminal, transferring 10,000 yuan over. You are indeed a tycoon. The guard laughed proudly. Look, but you are only allowed to look, not touch. If you dare to touch even a speck of paint on this super maglev flying car, I will pierce through your hand. Gohan did not say a word. He only nodded and walked to the side of the super maglev flying car. He walked around the car and realized that it was indeed prehistoric technology. There was not a single crack on the entire body of the maglev flying car. There were no rivets, seams, or screw holes. The entire maglev flying car looked like it was carved out of a huge piece of jade. Every part was seamless, and it was not something that could be produced by humans. What's the fastest speed of this car? In less than a minute, Gohan left the maglev flying car and asked the guard. Brother, I'll be honest with you. I don't know how fast it can go. Perhaps because he had received 10,000 renminbi from Gohan, the guard's attitude towards Gohan was much better. Ever since this maglev flying car was dug up, no one has driven it to their heart's content. Naturally, no one has been able to drive it to its maximum speed. So, we don't know what the maximum speed of this maglev flying car is. What's the upper limit displayed on the dashboard? Generally speaking, if the maximum speed of a maglev flying car was 1,000 km per hour, then the upper limit displayed on the dashboard would be 1,200 km per hour. So, based on the markings on the dashboard, the maximum speed of the maglev flying car could be calculated. I don't know either. The guard waved his hand. This maglev flying car doesn't even have a steering wheel in the driver's seat. Not to mention something like a dashboard. In fact, other than 2 chairs, there's nothing else in the maglev flying car. Not even a steering wheel? Then, how do we control this maglev flying car? Behind Gohan, Reina Kosaka could not help but ask. This was the first time she had spoken since coming to the warehouse. Use your mind. The guard gave Gohan a very sci-fi answer. As long as you're in the driver's seat, the maglev will be able to move with just a thought. It can even speed up, decelerate, and turn according to your will. According to one of my brothers who has driven this maglev flying car before, this maglev flying car feels like it's his own legs. He can move it however he wants. If that's the case, then this maglev flying car is controlled through human brainwaves. Gohan said thoughtfully. Brainwave control technology was already in its infancy even before the apocalypse. However, even after 1,000 years, brainwave control technology was still facing many problems. Humans still did not have the perfect technology in this area. So, maglev flying cars still used the more primitive manual control technology or AI automatic control technology. Can I get in the car and try driving? Gohan couldn't help but ask. No. The guard rejected him without hesitation. Chapter 753. Big brother! Go to the bathroom. Gohan extended a hand towards the guard. Then, the personal terminal on Gohan's arm suddenly projected a line of words. On it was clearly written the words 50,000 renminbi. Our boss said that if any outsider gets into this hovercraft, he or she can disappear right under our noses with just a thought. So, no one is allowed to enter the driver's seat of this hovercraft, not even us. So I'm sorry, the guard said with a pained expression when he saw the 50,000 renminbi. Then let me speak to your boss, Gohan said again. No, absolutely not. The guard still refused. Our boss said that he would not speak to any outsiders. Even we rarely speak to our boss. Don't even think about it. At this point, the guard's face was already showing signs of impatience. I say, are you going to buy it or not? If not, then get out of here. Don't disturb my business. Alright. Then give me a price. Gohan did not have the time to waste with these people. He guessed that these people would not dare to use a fake hovercraft to deceive him. Otherwise, they would be more than happy to go to the Discipline Inspection Commission's prison. Oh, that's not right. They did not have the qualifications to enter the Discipline Inspection Commission's prison. They would probably just randomly find a prison where some prisoners who had not seen a woman for decades were locked up. A fixed price. 66,666 renminbi. The guard revealed a price that sounded a little scary to the ears of ordinary people. However, to Gohan this price seemed exceptionally cheap. Previously, he had actually bought a super hovercraft for 66,666 renminbi. It was even cheaper than that yen Huang 3008. Where else could he find such a good deal? Therefore, Gohan agreed to this price on the spot and happily paid the full amount. He even added an additional 10,000 renminbi to each of the guards. And so, under everyone's happy smiles, Gohan finally boarded the super hovercraft made by the prehistoric civilization. Connecting consciousness, consciousness connected. Beginning confirmation. First, Master's animal species, species confirmed, serial number A001 animal human, meets the basic requirements of the operator. Dear operator, welcome to the scientific research vehicle serial number 44757865. You are now free to pilot the scientific research vehicle serial number 44757865. This thought flashed in Gohan's mind. However, this thought was not like the human mind tools that used words to transmit thoughts. Instead, it was a purer thought. This kind of feeling could not be described with words. Those who sensed it all knew what it meant, but when they really wanted to describe it, they could not say a single word. Get in! Gohan shouted at the top of his lungs, but Reina Takasaka, who was waiting by the car, did not say a word. She just stood there without moving. What? Didn't I tell you to get in? Gohan said impatiently. This car doesn't have a seat for me. Takasaka Rina repeated herself 3 times before she could finish her sentence. It was just as Takasaka Rina had said, there was no seat for her in the car. That was because this flying car was an F1 racing car from before the apocalypse. There was only one seat for the driver and no other. That's not a problem, Gohan said calmly. Although there is only one seat, the space is huge. You can sit in front of me, and I'll give you half of the seat. Who wants you to give me half of the seat? Gohan's words made Takasaka Rina even angrier, or more accurately, she blushed even more. When people squeezed into buses or cars, they would definitely encounter situations where these two people had to sit in the same seat. Generally speaking, there were 2 positions when 2 people squeezed into the same seat. Either the seats were split in the middle, with the 2 people sitting on each side, squeezing half of their buttocks together, or the larger person would sit on the seat first and spread his legs, giving the empty seat to the other person. If the 2 people were simply friends, they would usually choose the first position. Only those couples who were very close to each other would choose this kind of ambiguous second position. It would be fine if Takasaka Rina and Gohan used the first position to squeeze into one seat, and Takasaka Rina could bear with it for a while. But the problem was that this flying car was just as Gohan said, with a lot of space in the driver's seat. But the space was vertical and not horizontal. This flying car was less than 0.6 meters wide and sitting Gohan's 0.5 meter wide but was already very strenuous. If Takasaka Rina's 0.4 meter wide but was added to the mix, it was impossible to imagine how awkward it would be and how the two buttocks would be squeezed together. So for Gohan and Takasaka Rina, the second position was the only reasonable solution. But Takasaka Rina seemed to be unable to accept the fact that she had to sit on Gohan's lap. Even after Gohan urged her repeatedly, she still refused to get on the car. "Do I have to write 3,000 words just to get on the car?" Gohan mumbled in a language that even he did not understand. Suddenly, a sword aura shot out from his hand and wrapped around Takasaka Rina's waist, pulling her into the flying car. "Holy shit! That's a superpower!" One of the guards said dumbfoundedly when he saw Takasaka Rina being pulled into the flying car by something invisible. "Idiot! That's not a superpower. It's the sword aura of a swordsman." The person who spoke to Gohan was quite knowledgeable. He actually recognized that Gohan was using sword aura. But the next moment, the guard's expression changed drastically. "This is bad. This man is a swordsman. Boss has said that we are not allowed to do business with swordsmen." After saying that, the guard hurriedly approached the hovercraft, wanting to pull Gohan off the hovercraft. Unfortunately, it was too late. The moment the guard took a step forward, the hovercraft shot out of the warehouse like a rocket. In less than 2 seconds, it disappeared from the guard's sight. "Damn it! Where's 3? Come out! Why the F***CK did you bring a swordsman here?" The guard shouted 3's name angrily. 3 was the shop assistant who led Gohan to the warehouse. Unfortunately, when Gohan arrived, 3 seemed to have sensed something and left the warehouse. "Boss, it's me." The guard immediately reported to his boss. "Boss, the person who bought the flying car is a swordsman. What should we do now? He shouldn't be able to leave Yanjing City in time. Should we send someone to block him at the exit?" "Not necessary? Why?" After hearing the answer from his boss, the guard asked curiously. "Because I'm useless?" The guard stupidly repeated his boss's answer, and then immediately reacted. He immediately threw away the gun in his hand and wanted to run away, but it was too late. The entire warehouse suddenly let out a huge explosion, and then completely turned into ashes. A few minutes later, the fire truck arrived and found that the workers inside had been burned to ashes. According to the investigation, it was found that these workers had illegally stacked a large amount of gasoline in the warehouse. Then another worker courted death by smoking in the warehouse and finally ignited the gasoline and caused an explosion. The entire investigation report was very detailed and convincing. This matter was sealed in the archives of the fire department and no one cared about the real story behind it. "Let me go. I don't want to sit on you." When the flying car started moving, the sword aura that Gohan had bound Rina Takasaka disappeared. Rina Takasaka was able to break free and quickly moved her but away from Gohan's body. "Watch out for your head." Before Gohan could finish his sentence, Rina Takasaka slammed her head on the roof of the flying car, creating a crisp sound. Looking at Rina Takasaka's clumsy reflexes, Gohan found it hard to connect this Rina Takasaka with the Rina Takasaka who almost killed him a few months ago in the Miling mountain range. "You don't have to worry about my business." Rina Takasaka glared at Gohan. Suddenly, she realized that the seat was indeed quite spacious. So, she simply sat on the ground. Although it was a very uncomfortable position and she had to curl her legs up, it was the best position she could think of to separate herself from Gohan. Gohan did not pay much attention to Rina Takasaka's choice. As long as she could quietly stay in the driver's seat and not cause trouble for him, it was fine. Compared to Rina Takasaka, Gohan was more interested in figuring out how this flying car worked. From the 10 minutes of driving, Gohan did not feel any obvious feeling of a buttock being pushed under his butt. That was because a normal flying car would use a magnetic jet under the chassis to release gas to hover in the air and then drive at high speed. Therefore, no matter how advanced a flying car was, the passenger would inevitably feel a force pushing upward from his butt. This was scientifically known as the feeling of a buttock being pushed. However, this flying car did not have such a feeling. Not only was there no feeling of a buttock being pushed, he could not even feel the feeling of a buttock being pushed. Sitting in this flying car, it felt like it was parked on the road. But in reality, the hover car was moving forward at a speed of 100 kilometers per hour. If not for the constantly changing scenery outside the window, Gohan would have had a hard time believing that this was a moving hover car. "This is real black technology," Gohan exclaimed. Chapter 754. The East Gate of Yanjing City's 7th Ring Road could be considered the most deserted exit in Yanjing City. The armored hover train and the other trucks entered from the West Gate, while most of the sword bearers entered from the South Gate. This was because the East Gate directly faced a vast expanse of farmland, and these farmland had achieved a high degree of automation. There were less than 200 people from outside the city responsible for monitoring the situation of each farmland in every control room. Those who really needed to enter and leave Yanjing City from the East Gate were only these 200 or so people from outside the city. Many times, the number of people and vehicles entering and leaving the East Gate did not even exceed 10 times in a day. Therefore, although the entire East Gate had 10 entrances, the other 9 were all in a closed state, and only one entrance was open. On this day, the administrator of this entrance was bored to death as he used his personal terminal to read a novel downloaded from a forum. In this day and age, if the content of a web novel didn't have a bit of an erotic plot, then no one would be interested in reading such a novel. This administrator saw an interesting part. The male lead of the novel, the sword bearer, saved a beautiful, ordinary human female lead, and sat in a hover car, preparing to escape from Yuan Ko's lair. The male lead suddenly, unfortunately, discovered that he had been poisoned. This novel would make all the blood in the male lead's body converge at one point, and then with a bang, the converged point would completely explode. Then, in order to save the male lead's life, the female lead could only give up her shyness, and in this small space of the hover car, used her own mouth to soothe the male lead's burgeoning body. Just as the administrator was reading in high spirits, he suddenly heard the sound of a horn. This administrator raised his head reluctantly and saw a water droplet-shaped hover car parked at the exit, preparing to leave Yanjing City. There's actually a hover car leaving from the East Gate. The last time a hover car left from here was 5 or 6 days ago. The administrator thought with some doubt, but after thinking about it carefully, it didn't seem strange. After all, this was an exit of Yanjing City, and it was normal for a few hover cars to occasionally leave from here. In fact, the administrator was more interested in the appearance of this hover car. It was a perfect water droplet shape, and its entire body was natural, without a trace of artificial casting. Looking at the administrator, a desire to own such a hovercraft was ignited in his heart. Sigh, what kind of useless things are I thinking about? I'm afraid I can't even afford a single wheel of this hovercraft with 20 years of salary. The manager sighed. At that moment, the hovercraft raised its roof. The driver stretched out his hand and touched his personal terminal to the scanner at the exit. This person is actually the sword bearer of Yuzhong City. The manager had worked here for more than 10 years, but he had never seen more than 10 people in Yuzhong City. So when he saw that Gohan belonged to Yuzhong City, he was very surprised. "Comrade, you are going back to Yuzhong City. How is Yuzhong City doing? I heard that you were miserable during the Great Invasion." This administrator really didn't know how to conduct himself. How could he directly ask how miserable Yuzhong City was during the invasion? And Gu Han responded with an, which could be considered as an answer. Comrade, where did you buy this hovercraft? What brand is it called? It's really beautiful. I'm going to look for pictures online to satisfy my craving. Gu Han didn't know what brand this hovercraft was. At that moment, the inspection procedures were automatically completed, and the barricade at Yanjing City's main gate was raised. Seeing this, Gu Han immediately commanded the hovercraft to move forward, and in the blink of an eye, it had left the administrator's line of sight. What's so great about it? Seeing that Gu Han didn't answer his question and drove away, the administrator was naturally filled with anger. He immediately began to look at the nearby surveillance cameras, wanting to get a picture of Gu Han, and then curse Gu Han fiercely. However, when the surveillance video appeared in front of the administrator was surprised to find that there was something wrong with the video. Between Gu Han's legs, there was a long-haired girl sitting under the seat. The girl's face couldn't be seen clearly, but her head was directly facing Gu Han's crotch. Any man with a rich imagination could instantly figure out what had just happened. Wow! This is actual combat. The administrator immediately flipped through the book he had just read, and reread the plot in the novel. In an instant, it was as if the male and female protagonists were perfectly ensnared in the heads of Gu Han and the girl with long, black hair. No wonder he didn't want to pay attention to me. He was busy doing something. The administrator instantly understood Gu Han's thoughts with his own way of thinking, but he was still unhappy in his heart. He secretly took a dozen of the clearest and most imaginative pictures from the video and posted them on the forum. He named it "Lecherous Swordsman Had Sex in the Car in Front of the Surveillance Camera." As a result, Gu Han instantly became a hot topic in the entire Yanjing City's forum, and it also laid the groundwork for what happened later. After leaving Yanjing City, there was no longer a city speed limit of 100 kilometers per hour, so Gu Han could finally try driving the hovercraft to its maximum speed. Because the hovercraft didn't have a dashboard to measure speed, Gu Han could only use the map navigation function of his personal terminal to calculate his driving speed. In the end, Gu Han was shocked to discover that this seemingly unparalleled maglev hovercraft wasn't moving very fast at full speed, only about 800 kilometers per hour. Even the maglev hovercraft from 400 years ago was faster than this hovercraft. This discovery made Gu Han's expression turn ugly. Gu Han even wanted to turn around and return the car immediately. He thought he had picked up some treasure, but he didn't expect it to be such a good-looking but useless thing. But this couldn't be blamed on anyone else. It was Gu Han's own conceit. He took it for granted that this high-class, prehistoric hovercraft should naturally have a speed that surpassed the current human standard. This matter also made Gu Han take warning. It was just like what a famous person before the apocalypse had said. Don't think that the American democratic system will definitely elect the best. The American people may elect a president like Roosevelt, but it could also be Trump. Speaking of which, who was this Trump? The President of the United States who was proficient in Sichuan Mandarin? Gu Han was very puzzled. Although the speed of the hovercraft was only average, Gu Han immediately discovered the benefits of this droplet flying car. This hovercraft actually didn't need to slow down on the road. The maximum speed of the hovercraft could only be achieved on flat road. In the real world outside the city, the hovercraft had no choice but to use most of its engine power to increase its height due to the terrible environment. This way, the hovercraft could only be driven as high as possible in the dense forest. At that time, most of the engine power of the hovercraft was used to increase its height, so the power used to increase its speed was naturally less. When driving on the highway ruins, the hovercraft could reach a speed of about 800 kilometers per hour. But if it entered a complex forest environment, this speed could even be reduced to less than 100 kilometers per hour. Moreover, the driver of the hovercraft had to be fully focused and alert to the surrounding environment. If they weren't careful, the hovercraft could crash into a tree, resulting in a tragic car accident. But this droplet flying car was different. To Gohan's surprise, no matter what kind of terrain it faced, this hovercraft could travel at the same speed. According to its operating principle, it didn't need to expend a large amount of power to increase its height. It seemed to be able to increase and decrease its height from the ground without expending any power. So, no matter how complex the terrain was, it didn't need to expend any extra power to reduce its speed. That was why after leaving Yanjing City, Gohan could actually maintain a speed of 800 kilometers per hour. A simple calculation of the averages showed that overall, the droplet flying car was slightly faster. In fact, for Gohan, the fastest way to return to Yuzhong City was to follow the restored highway that the armored hovercraft had taken when he came. But the entire highway was under human surveillance, and his flying car would definitely be captured by the surveillance cameras on the road. If the people of Yanjing City found out that he had left Yanjing City to return to Yuzhong City temporarily, it would be bad. The 8th Academy Assembly was about to begin, so why did he run back to Yuzhong City? And when he ran back to Yuzhong City, the broken sword just happened to disappear. Even a fool would be able to guess that it had something to do with him. So, Gohan could only take the small road and return to Yuzhong City through the jungle. In this way, the advantage of the droplet flying car's speed and stability was even more perfect. The droplet flying car was good, but its biggest weakness was that it was too narrow. Even with Gohan's physique, he felt sore and weak after sitting for a while, not to mention Rina Takasaka between Gohan's legs. What gave Gohan a headache was that in Gohan's Zifu, Chinpin was constantly shouting and making noise, saying that she didn't want to stay in the scabbard anymore, and that she wanted to sit on Gohan's neck and stay in Gohan's pocket. Rina Takasaka was already enough to squeeze in here, and if Chinpin was added, who knew how noisy it would be? If only this space could be a little more spacious. Such a thought emerged in Gohan's mind, and in the next moment, something miraculous happened. The entire space in the droplet flying car suddenly began to expand in all directions. Be it in length, width, or height, all of them continued to grow. In the end, it expanded into a large rectangular space that was tens of meters long, tens of meters wide, and 2 meters tall. Could it be that this droplet flying car can expand and contract freely? Gohan immediately rushed to the windshield that was already more than 10 meters away from him, and was shocked to find that he was driving in a sparse forest. Although the forest was sparse, the longest distance between two trees was not more than 5 meters. But the droplet flying car could easily fly between two trees, which meant that the width of the droplet flying car was definitely less than 5 meters. But if that was the case, how could the width of more than 10 meters around Gohan be explained? Could it be that this droplet flying car uses space folding technology? A huge exclamation mark appeared in Gohan's mind. Space folding technology was a technology that humans could only use after mastering the dimensional crystal. They needed to borrow the power of the dimensional crystal to fold a large space into a small tent. But this was a droplet flying car invented by prehistoric humans, so how did they do it? Did they find another way to achieve space-folding technology, or were the humans 60 million years ago also using dimensional crystals? Chapter 755. Due to the large space, Reina Takasaka and Gohan were able to stay far away from each other. Therefore, nothing interesting happened between the two of them. Gohan's main focus was on studying the flying droplet. After several hours of research, Gohan gradually discovered many more amazing technologies about the flying droplet. Some of them seemed like black technology to modern humans. The black technology of the droplet flying car could be summed up in 4 words, and that was, do as you please. Gohan could almost do anything with his mind. This was not just controlling the droplet flying car to fly, in the hundreds of square meters of folded space of the droplet flying car, Guhan could use his mind to materialize anything. For example, if Guhan wanted to sleep, a bed would immediately appear next to him. If Guhan wanted to wash his hands, a sink would immediately appear. If he wanted a private bathroom, a fully equipped bathroom would immediately appear. Such an experience made Guhan feel like he had become a god. However, Guhan soon discovered that these things that appeared were the same. If he wanted a chair would indeed appear. However, when he wanted to ask for a red chair, the chair that appeared just now was still the same one. Another example was if Guhan wanted a bed. No matter how detailed Guhan described it, he wanted a small, simple single bed. In reality, a luxurious double bed made of pure wood would always appear. It was the same for the bathroom. If Guhan wanted a squatting toilet, it would always appear as a sitting toilet. Moreover, not everything Guhan wanted would appear. For example, if Guhan wanted a sword, there would be no response from the flying droplet. If Guhan wanted an animal like a cat or a dog, nothing would appear. Combining these phenomena, Guhan quickly figured out that these things that appeared out of nowhere were actually created in advance and hidden in the folded space. Once Guhan received the command from his mind, these things hidden in other spaces would immediately appear beside Guhan. To put it simply, the flying droplet was like a sword wielder with its own dimensional pocket. Once Guhan gave the command, the flying droplet would take out what Guhan wanted from its dimensional pocket. Therefore, when faced with some very detailed requests from Guhan or something that the flying droplet's dimensional pocket did not have, the flying droplet could no longer meet Guhan's need. After fully understanding this point, Guhan fell into deep thought. The dimensional pocket was something that could only be used by the sword wielder, and it required the sword essence of the sword wielder to be able to freely enter and take it out. If the flying droplet really used the technology of the dimensional pocket, then it must mean that in the Lemurian civilization 60 million years ago, humans could also freely use the sword essence. As for whether there was a sword maiden at that time, only God knew. Moreover, Guhan also vaguely discovered that the ability of the flying droplet was not as simple as it appeared to be. When Guhan's mind controlled the flying droplet, he could vaguely feel that the flying droplet had some deeper functions. But this function showed a state of complete resistance to Guhan's mind. No matter how Guhan conveyed his thoughts, the sealed things did not respond, and Guhan could only give up on this exploration. When it was late at night, Guhan could finally see a brightly lit city in front of him. Guhan had returned to Yuzhang City, and it had only been 8 hours since Guhan set off from Yenjing City. Such a short time not only surprised Guhan, but even Reina Kosaka was completely stunned. It must be known that it took Guhan 7 days to travel from Yuzhang City to Yenjing City in the armored levitating train, but now it only took him 8 hours to return to Yuzhang City. Of course, there were many other factors involved. For example, the armored levitating train used at least 4 days to repair the broken highway between Yuzhang City and Yenjing City. And Guhan's journey was smooth. Not even a dragon-class Yuan Ko could catch up with Guhan's speed. He returned to Yuzhang City almost without stopping. But that wasn't the main reason. The main reason was the droplet flying car's superior ability to ignore terrain. When faced with complicated terrain, the levitating car could only travel at a speed of less than 100 km per hour, sometimes even less than 10 km per hour. But the droplet flying car could ignore the same terrain. It flew over the terrain without even slowing down. That was the main reason why the droplet flying car could return to Yuzhang City in only 8 hours. "Let's go to the city," Guhan said to Reina Kosaka. Reina Kosaka nodded and followed Guhan to Yuzhang City. But halfway there, Reina Takasaka realized that something was amiss. Reina Takasaka had lived in Yuzhang City for less than a month, so she had a basic understanding of the city's geography. Guhan, who was leading the way, did not walk towards the city gate of Yuzhang City. Instead, He headed towards a location in the northwest corner of the city wall. Even if she was beaten to death, she would not believe that there was a city gate there. "Where are we going?" Reina Kosaka asked. "This isn't the way to the city. I can't go through the gate," Gohan replied faintly. "If it's possible, I hope that no one in Yuzhong City knows that I'm back." "Do you understand what I mean? Are you going to do something shameful this time?" Only then did Reina Kosaka realize that Gohan's purpose for coming back was not simple. "It's indeed something shameful." Gohan nodded and admitted readily. "Are you going to report me?" "I'm not human. I don't care if you humans live or die," Reina Kosaka muttered softly and said no more. It was only when Reina Kosaka and Gohan arrived at their destination that Reina Kosaka realized that she was wrong. There was indeed a gate at the northwest corner of the city wall. The gate was a hidden door and no one was guarding it. Looking from outside the city wall, there was no sign of the gate's existence at all. However, as soon as Gohan got close to the city wall, he tapped on a small depression on the wall, and the originally seamless wall slowly opened up. Through the opening, Gohan and Reina Kosaka easily entered Yuzhong City. "How do you know there's a hidden gate here?" Reina Kosaka immediately regretted asking this question. She immediately realized what was going on. A hidden gate like this must have been designed by the Kenjutsu to arrange escape routes or to launch a surprise attack on Yuan-ko. Gohan was once the Kenkaku cabinet master in Yuzhong City, so he must know all kinds of secrets in Yuzhong City. "Sure enough," Gohan answered, "this is an emergency exit. There are more than 20 such exits in Yuzhong City." After walking out of the hidden door, Reina Kosaka returned to Yuzhong City after 2 months. Reina Kosaka hesitated when she saw the familiar yet strange city. She did not know how she should face the city. "Oh right, I have a question for you. Reina Kosaka shouldn't be your real name, right? If I remember correctly, Reina Kosaka is the name of the swordswoman in Yuzhong City. You're just impersonating her. What's your real name?" Gohan suddenly asked. "Fleeting Reina." Reina Takasaka, who was immersed in her own thoughts, blurted out her real name. However, the name was not surprising at all. She had merely changed her surname to Fleeting Time. Gohan had already guessed that Reina Kosaka was Fleeting Time's daughter from his conversation with Fleeting Muki and Fleeting Masa. However, he did not expect her real name to be Reina. It was the same name as the person she had impersonated. "My name is not Fleeting Reina. It's Reina Kosaka." Fleeting Reina yelled at Gohan. She seemed to hate the name from the bottom of her heart. "Whatever. I'll call you Reina then," said Gohan and continued walking towards the core area. Gohan had many questions about Fleeting Reina. The most important question was whether Fleeting Time Reina was a human or not. Gohan had witnessed Fleeting Reina's ability to control the air with his own eyes. She did not have any sword maidens in her hands at that time, which meant that Fleeting Reina did not borrow the power of the sword maidens. She had used her own power to control the air. Where did Fleeting Time Reina's power come from? Did she awaken a superpower from a novel? She was able to control the power of the wind with her human body? Or was she the same as Misaka Mikoto, a human from another world? In other words, Yuan-ko? Gohan had been keeping a close eye on Fleeting Reina when she passed through the dimensional barrier of Yuzhong City. If the dimensional barrier was able to obstruct her, Gohan would immediately give up on the idea of letting Fleeting Reina enter Yuzhong City. He would instead send her to the Heaven and Earth Furnace to wait for him. However, nothing out of the ordinary happened when Fleeting Reina passed through the dimensional barrier. Gohan had no choice but to keep his worries to himself. Chapter 756. Gohan had gotten very close to this Grandmaster Swordsmith, who had destroyed a broken sword. He had been locked up in the prison where Lu Yin had been held. The prison had even made a separate space for his forging laboratory. However, after the complete disappearance of the Sword Maiden, the sword-forging guru, who had committed a grave crime, could no longer stay in prison. Instead, she was transferred to Mount Tai Prison, which was directly managed by the Sword Committee, and was guarded by human special forces. Although the guns in the hands of human soldiers were not very effective against Yuan Ko and the sword-bearers, they were still very effective against ordinary humans or swordsmith. This was because these humans did not have personal shields, so they could not resist weapons like guns. In fact, guns could still pose a threat to Yuan Ko and the sword-bearers. As long as bullets were made from dimensional alloys of a certain purity, human guns could still cause damage to Yuan Ko and the sword-bearers. This was widely known after the true use of dimensional crystals was discovered. After knowing this, humans had once excitedly planned to rebuild their army and use airplanes and cannons to completely annihilate the damned Yuan Ko. Unfortunately, humans soon discovered that this was not realistic. Using dimensional alloys to make guns required a large number of dimensional crystals. For example, a huge mine like the Miling Mountain Range could not produce 1,000,000 bullets in a year. 1,000,000 bullets did not seem like a lot. Before the apocalypse, when the impoverished Yanhuang Empire, which had no industrial foundation, was attacked by Japan, it would consume about 10 million bullets in a single battle. During the 8-Year War, Yanhuang Empire had consumed a total of 3 billion bullets. This number was because Yanhuang was too poor. On the battlefield in Europe, the rich Americans spent 7 billion bullets a year. The Germans used 3 billion bullets a year. Even the tiny England used more than 2 billion bullets a year, British and French Allied forces. Therefore, 1,000,000 bullets was simply a drop in the bucket in the war against Yuan Ko. In a large-scale battle, the bullets would be used up in less than an hour. By then, these troops could only wait for death. Moreover, for humans at that time, the most important thing was to use dimensional crystals to build a safe giant wall to protect the lives of ordinary humans. Therefore, the plan to build a firearms army was put on hold. In the end, as the sword-bearers grew and took full control of the human regime, the idea of a firearms army was completely abandoned. However, although the idea of using firearms as an army was unrealistic, some of the elite special forces were a good idea. These special forces had excellent marksmanship. With bullets made of high-purity dimensional alloys, they could occasionally blow up mouse-grade or tiger-grade Yuan Ho with a single shot. Unfortunately, special forces and sword-bearers with such qualifications were as rare as the sword-bearers. Not many ordinary humans were willing to be soldiers. Therefore, the number of special forces had been maintained at around a few hundred. They were responsible for guarding some important departments, such as the Mount Tai prison in front of Gahan. Under the guard of these special forces, the entire Mount prison was impregnable. Mount Tai prison was impregnable. Under the threat of metal storms formed by pure dimensional crystals bullets, even the spiritual sword-bearers could explode instantly. Therefore, in the past hundreds of years, except for the Great Invasion, when it couldn't be defended, Mount Tai prison had never gone wrong. But now, the time for Mount Tai prison to go wrong had finally arrived. P.S. Regarding the setting of firearms, everyone must feel that it's very abrupt, because there seems to be no foreshadowing in the previous text. It just appeared inexplicably. In fact, in the beginning, the author completely abandoned the setting of firearms. But later, many readers came to find the author, saying that according to the author's setting, firearms could still fight with Yuan Ko. Unless the human collective was mentally retarded, it was impossible not to discover the benefits and feasibility of building a firearms army. This was a huge logical error. The author thought for a long time and felt that the readers were right. Since the dimensional crystals were designed, firearms became a possibility. Unless the author admitted that he was mentally retarded, firearms should exist in the Sword Maiden's world. After resetting, the setting of Firearms Army was hastily added after more than 700 chapters. But please rest assured, the Firearms Army is just a foil. The real worldview will not change on a large scale. Their appearance is not a foreshadowing, but just to make the Sword Maiden's world more perfect. These Special Forces guards of Mount Tai prison were using their sharp eyes to search the surroundings of the prison. Above their heads, the brand new high-energy laser radar had completely covered the entire surrounding environment. Even if a fly flew in, it couldn't escape the eyes of these Special Forces. This kind of high-energy laser radar was currently the most advanced black technology of mankind. Even if a spirit sword wielder was holding a killing sword maiden, this radar could detect him. Therefore, these Special Forces trusted the radar in their hands very much, which was more trust than their own eyes. It was reasonable to say that this kind of security was already very tight to the extreme. It was absolutely impossible for anyone to escape this kind of security. However, when all of this was done by a high-level mole, all of this became a complete decoration. Under Lu Shihua's remote control, these radar were collectively blinded. There was obviously a person swaggering under their scanning, but there was not even a fly on the display of these radar. Winter is good. Unlike summer, the whole screen is full of flies that stung people to death. A Special Forces sentry said to his comrade beside him. "Idiot, it's not a fly that stings people, it's a mosquito." The Special Forces soldier who spoke glanced at his comrade with contempt. With just a glance, he seemed to have seen something flash past his line of sight. "Not good. There's someone." This Special Forces soldier immediately raised his loaded automatic rifle and shouted, "What are you panicking for? I've been staring at the radar, and there was indeed something flashing past just now. But it's not a person, it's a fly." The comrade said disdainfully. "I see." The nervous Special Forces soldier put down his weapon, let out a long sigh of relief, and patted his comrade on the shoulder. "We will be discharged in a few months. What are you going to do after that?" "Don't worry, I already have an idea." The comrade laughed. "I'm going to be a bodyguard for the beautiful CEO or the campus belle. Then I can get a promotion and a raise in salary, reach the pinnacle of life, and marry a Ms. Perfect." "Why do you have to be a bodyguard for the beautiful CEO or the campus belle?" the other Special Forces soldier asked in confusion. "Also, why can a bodyguard get a promotion and a raise in salary, reach the pinnacle of life, and marry a Ms. Perfect? Is there such a logic?" "Of course there is. This is a true story from before the apocalypse. Someone even recorded it." With that said, the Special Forces soldier clicked on his personal terminal, and a novel titled, "The Personal Special Forces Bodyguard of the Beautiful President of the City's Campus Belle," entered the eyes of the other Special Forces soldier. While the two Special Forces soldiers were reading the novel and looking forward to a promotion and a raise in salary, Gohan had already snuck into Mount Tai prison. Gohan did not bring fleeting time Lena with him. Instead, he asked her to find a hotel to stay in and wait for him to contact her. Gohan was confident that he could sneak into Mount Tai prison alone, but he did not have the confidence to bring fleeting time Lena with him. According to the information that Gohan had, the broken sword was still in the hands of the Grandmaster Swordsmith. It seemed that the Grandmaster Swordsmith had not given up on his experiment, and was determined to carry on with it. The broken sword was hidden within Mount Tai prison. Once the Special Forces of the Swordsmith Association arrived, the Grandmaster Swordsmith would have to reforge the broken sword and return it to the earth. Through long-distance communication with Lu Shihua, Gohan quickly found the storage room where the broken sword was. Similarly, under Lu Shihua's remote control, the door that was protected by 36 layers of encryption was completely opened in less than a second. One couldn't blame the door for its poor defense. If the owner opened the door faster, there would be no need for the door to exist anymore. The moment the door was closed and the lights were switched on, Gohan saw the broken sword in the display cabinet. The blade of the sword that was originally bright was now gray, like a rusted machine. It gave off a strange feeling of dilapidation. The blade of the sword had been split into two, and the jagged cut on the blade showed that the ancient sword had been through an intense and cruel battle. In the end, it was broken into two and given to the Grandmaster Swordsmith as a test subject. In the end, the Grandmaster Swordsmith destroyed its own soul. "I'm sorry." Looking at the dagger, Guhan was silent for a long time. Then, he very respectfully bent his waist and bowed 3 times to the broken dagger. Each time, his head touched his knees before he straightened his back. This was Guhan's apology to the broken sword, as well as humanity's apology to her. Her soul did not die in the hands of Yuan Ko, but was destroyed in the hands of humanity. Goddess of Zhongdian, instead of silently mixing with the soil, why not lend your body to a comrade, and let her use your body to obtain a new life? Isn't this a kind of rebirth for you? I hope you can understand my actions. If you can't, then I, Guhan, will bear all the sins. This has nothing to do with King Yu. Guhan muttered to the sword of Zhongdian. Chapter 757. The broken sword in Guhan's hand was called Zhongdian's sword, and it was an ancient sword maiden. According to the records, this sword maiden seemed to be the weapon of an assassin from the Middle Ages. This assassin was unknown, so this Zhongdian sword was also unknown. Naturally, the Zhongdian sword's ability was also unknown. It was ranked at the bottom of the ancient sword record, around 200th to 300th from the bottom. It was precisely because Zhongdian sword's ability was not strong that the Sword Council mercilessly handed it over to this swordsmith grandmaster to experiment on after it broke. If it had been an ancient sword maiden ranked 200th to 300th from the ancient sword record, the Sword Council would not have taken the risk to give it to this grandmaster. The entire matter could be said to be Zhongdian sword's sorrow, the swordsmith grandmaster's sorrow, and the Sword Council's sorrow. King Yu, you can take a look. This is your future body. Guhan shouted King Yu's name, but he took out Juzi's sword. This was because when he tried to bring King Yu's soul out of the game, King Yu's soul and Juzi's soul were brought into Juzi's sword's body. Thus, Juzi's sword had 2 sword maidens' souls. However, according to King Yu's complaints, staying in Juzi's sword's body was like having a very narrow attic. He was just a passerby in Juzi County's body that could be chased away at any time. If Juzi's sword was unhappy, King Yu's soul would immediately be chased out of Juzi's sword and disappear into the air. Is this the future me? Should I change my name to Zhongdian's sword? The moment King Yu saw his body, he was incomparably excited. But after the excitement, King Yu calmed down and suddenly felt a sense of unwillingness. This Zhongdian sword is actually ranked in the bottom 200th among ancient sword maidens. If I enter her body, wouldn't I go from being one of the best famed sword maidens to a useless, trashy ancient sword maidens? Thinking of this, King Yu became even more sorrowful. I don't want that. Suddenly, King Yu said unexpectedly, I don't want to enter this Zhongdian sword's body. I don't want to become as useless as her. A sword maiden like her will only break in 2. I'd rather die than become a sword maiden like her. This sudden turn of events caused Guhan's expression to instantly become complicated and angry. He spent so much effort and finally found this broken sword. He also found a suitable body for King Yu. But at this time, King Yu told her to give up. Then wouldn't her hard work be in vain? King Yu, stop messing around. Guhan said calmly, don't worry, as long as you are in my hands, I will never let you break. I will protect you forever, hold you, and grow old with you until the end of my life. For Guhan, this was a very rare thing to say. With Guhan's personality, it was rare for him to say such sweet words. However, these sweet words were useless in King Yu's ears. King Yu seemed to have fallen into a trance. I don't want it. I'd rather die than become a sword maiden like this. I'm fine staying in Juzi's body. I'll stay like this for now. Be obedient. Guhan sighed and reached for the Zhongdian sword in the display case. As he did so, he said to King Yu, calm down for a while. Once you're done, you'll realize that this is your best choice. No. Never. King Yu's trance became even more intense. Even if I enter the heaven and earth furnace, I'd rather my soul dissipate than run into this trash sword maiden's body. To me, this is worse than death. Ignoring King Yu's roars in his mind, he held the broken Zhongdian sword and prepared to leave Mount Tai prison. However, what Gohan could not take was that King Yu's roars in his mind became louder and louder. In the end, it reached the level of a roar. It was as if there were two heavy subwoofers in his head, and these two heavy subwoofers were making annoying noises at their loudest. This gave Gohan a headache. Juzi, can you make her shut up? Gohan felt helpless and could only ask Juzi. Yes. Juzi's answer was very concise. Then make her shut up. Gohan's order was equally concise. After Gohan's order was given, King Yu's voice instantly disappeared from Gohan's mind. The entire world instantly fell silent. Juzi, how did you do it? Gohan, who had relaxed, asked Juzi. At this moment, he was a little worried that Juzi had used some forceful method. For example, she had suppressed King Yu's soul or forced her soul out of the Juzi sword. If that happened, Gohan would regret it endlessly. I only sealed the connection between the Juzi sword and Master's soul. Juzi's words were true. When Juzi spoke, King Yu's crazy voice appeared in Gohan's mind again. As Juzi spoke, King Yu's voice also disappeared. Then won't it be hard on you? I'll let you bear this alone. Gohan suddenly felt a little embarrassed. Even he couldn't bear King Yu's crazy voice. Letting Juzi bear it alone must be very painful. Sister King Yu's soul is in my body, so Juzi can also feel her pain. At this point, Juzi fell silent. Master, there's something Juzi doesn't know if she should say. Say it. There's nothing that can't be said between the sword maiden and the sword wielder. Gohan said without hesitation. Master. In fact, Juzi knew Big Sister King Yu's true pain. Big Sister King Yu didn't feel pain because her power had weakened. She was worried that after she lost her original power, Master would put her on the shelf. When Master fights, Big Sister King Yu can only watch from the side and can't help Master with anything. This is what really hurts Big Sister King Yu. She only wants to fight for Master. This time, it was Gohan's turn to fall silent. However, Gohan didn't stay silent for too long before ordering Juzi, turn on the sound. I can't help King Yu, and I can't let her wait any longer. Let me bear the pain in her heart with her. As a result, Gohan stayed in the storage room and sat cross-legged on the ground without moving. He silently listened to King Yu's painful roars in his mind. After tens of minutes, King Yu's roars turned into unbridled cries. In the end, the cries became softer and softer until there was no more sound. Gohan's mind once again became completely quiet. What? Are you done venting? Gohan asked in his mind. Master, Big Sister King Yu's soul has consumed too much energy. She's tired and has fallen asleep. The one who answered Gohan was Juzi. Then let's go. My legs are numb from sitting too. Gohan bitterly smiled and stood up. After walking out of the storage room, he moved along a different route and prepared to leave Mount Tai prison. This new route required him to pass through a prison area and many prison gates. It was already 4 o'clock in the morning. Even the noisiest prison had quietened down. However, Gohan could clearly hear shouts coming from one of the gates of the prison. Let me out. It doesn't matter if I die, but Zhongdian's sword isn't dead yet. Let me out, I want to save her. Clearly, the one who shouted this was none other than the sword-forging Grandmaster who had turned Zhongdian's sword into this state. Gohan was disdainful of this guy, but he couldn't pretend that he didn't hear what he said at this time. He said that Zhongdian's sword was still alive. Didn't that mean that Zhongdian's sword's soul was still in its body? If Gohan took Zhongdian's sword to the worldly furnace, it would only be a waste of effort. King Yu could not possess the sword maiden's body that had its own soul. Of course, it was also possible that this sword-forging grandmaster knew that he would die for sure, so he wanted to say some nonsense to deceive others and stall for as much time as possible so that he could live. After hesitating for a while, Gohan felt that he could not take any risks in this matter. If what he said was true, after the worldly furnace opened, King Yu, who could not possess the Sword Maiden's body, would be forced out of the body by its original owner. In the end, he would be burned into nothingness by the worldly furnace's flames and completely cease to exist in this world. This was something that Gohan could not accept. Zhao Hao, also known as Grandmaster Tianri, was yelling helplessly in his cell. He had been yelling for a whole hour already. Aside from a prison guard who came to look at him and scolded him a little, no one else paid any attention to him. However, Zhao Hao did not give up. He decided to shout until his throat was completely destroyed. Otherwise, a sword maiden that could still be saved would be forcefully melted into molten iron and die for real. Just as Zhao Hao's throat was about to become hoarse, he finally heard the long-awaited sound of the door turning. Shortly after, a man in ordinary clothes walked in. Strange. Why isn't this man wearing a police uniform? The prison guards in Taishan prison naturally had to wear police uniforms, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, no one would come here except for the prison guards. Therefore, Gu Han, who appeared in regular clothes, seemed particularly strange. "I'm a sword wielder sent by the Sword Committee." Gu Han's personal terminal popped up his identity as a swordsman. "Taishan prison reported your case to the Sword Committee, so the Sword Committee sent me here to understand the situation. Please tell me your situation again." Alright. Gu Han's explanation was reasonable, so Zhao Hao did not doubt it at all. He then told Gohan everything. Chapter 758. Zhao Hao could actually be considered a good person, as his intentions had always been for the sake of humanity and the sword ladies. This could be seen from the topic he had researched at the beginning. The full title of Zhao Hao's original research topic was How to Quickly Repair Broken Natural Sword Ladies with Artificial Intervention. Simply put, it was about repairing broken sword ladies manually. Up until now, there had been no effective way to repair broken sword ladies. Some sword-forging grandmasters could rely on their own abilities to repair a portion of broken natural sword ladies, but there were far too few of them, even rarer than Jiendi. The small portion that sword-forging grandmasters could repair was too small, amounting to less than 10% of the total number of broken sword. Thus, after the Great Apocalypse, the most common way to repair sword ladies was to wait silently. They were placed in the sword burial grounds, a place that had the miraculous ability to repair sword ladies, and waited for these broken sword ladies to slowly repair themselves in the sword burial grounds. This process would take at least 50 years. For example, Liuyan Ling's leisurely celestial sword had been placed in the sword burial grounds after it had been broken. It had only been a few years since the leisurely celestial sword had finished repairing itself. The prerequisite for this was that the sword lady's soul had to be preserved. Once the soul in the sword lady's body was lost, the sword lady could only merge with the earth. After Zhao Hao became a sword-forging grandmaster, he was determined to change this situation. He researched a completely new method to repair broken swords, allowing the sword ladies placed in the sword burial grounds to see the light of day once more. Thus, Zhao Hao's original intentions were completely good. It was just that Zhao Hao had gradually gone astray in his research. He had originally planned to repair sword ladies, but he had accidentally discovered a method to make the broken fragments of a natural sword lady into an independent body. This method was to split the sword lady's soul in the broken sword, and then use the artificial sword lady's manufacturing technology and the high-purity dimensional crystal sword lady's original material formula to repair the two broken fragments into two identical natural sword ladies. This was actually similar to the survival ability of earthworms. If you used a sharp knife to cut an earthworm into two, after a period of time, you would find that the two parts of the earthworm did not die, but became two independent complete bodies, becoming two earthworms. Just by listening to it, one could tell how much this method violated human ethic. However, at that time, Zhao Hao had already entered a state of madness. He carried out the experiment without any hesitation. Then the experiment was reported by his disciple, who could not accept what he had done, and he became a prisoner and was locked up in prison. However, when Zhao Hao's experimental plan and detailed experimental records were handed over to the Sword Committee, the entire Sword Committee was shocked by his ideas and was even more tempted by his plan. If Zhao Hao's experiment was successful, then wouldn't the more than 800 broken swords in the humans' possession become 1,600 swords that could be used by humans? This would undoubtedly greatly increase the strength of the human race. In the face of survival, any ethical relationship was temporarily cast aside. At that time, under the dictatorship of Sword Immortal White Stallion Zhu Wudao reported Zhao Hao's matter to the Sword Committee headquarters, and then applied to allow Zhao Hao to continue his research. It was said that the Sword Committee headquarters held a meeting to discuss this for a long time, and in the end, they tacitly agreed to Zhu Wudao's plan. Thus, Zhao Hao's research could continue in the laboratory, until 3 days ago, when he completely courted death and completely destroyed the soul of Zhongyan's sword, which was the subject of the experiment. Actually, I've already carried out the preliminary research very well. After analyzing the original material of Zhongyan's sword, I've obtained steel that is exactly the same as the original material, and I can guarantee that the two Zhongyan swords that are repaired will be exactly the same. Zhao Hao told Gohan honestly. The most crucial part of the entire experiment is the step of splitting the sword lady's soul into two. How to ensure that after splitting the sword lady's soul into two, the soul of the sword lady can become two independent bodies and not dissipate. This is the most difficult problem. I've researched this problem for 30 years, and I finally made a breakthrough last month. Zhao Hao's face revealed a blissful expression, but this blissful expression soon turned into one of bitterness. But I failed in the end. The soul of Zhongyan's sword, which was used for the experiment, disappeared the moment it was split. No matter how the apparatus scanned it, it could not find the sword lady's soul. Then, they determined that Zhongyan's sword's soul had completely dissipated. Zhao Hao mumbled, and his emotions immediately became agitated. But I couldn't accept it, I couldn't believe it. I've researched for a whole 30 years. I've thought of every step, and I've used experiments to verify every detail. All the steps are feasible, but why did I fail when I put them together? Zhao Hao's expression became more and more pained as he spoke, but it also became more and more passionate. So I thought. I've been thinking. No matter what others do to me, or where they want to lock me up, I don't care. I've been thinking about this problem day and night, and it was only an hour ago that I finally figured it out. I didn't fail. I definitely didn't fail. I'm a winner, and I've succeeded. Zhao Hao suddenly grabbed Gohan's hand tightly. Zhongyan's sword didn't die. She only fell into a deep sleep the moment they were separated. Her soul must still be alive. That's impossible. Upon hearing Zhao Hao's words, Gohan replied resolutely. 3 grandmasters from Yuzhong City conducted an appraisal of Zhongyan's sword at the same time. These 3 grandmasters used their own reputations to guarantee that there is no longer any sword lady's soul in Zhongyan's sword. Could it be that those 3 grandmasters were lying? There were a total of 4 sword-forging grandmasters in Yuzhong City. From the perspective of a sword-forging grandmaster, the ability of a sword-forging grandmaster was equal to that of an immortal sword wielder. The remaining sword-forging grandmaster had also guaranteed that there was no soul in Zhongyan's sword, so it was naturally more credible than Zhao Hao's words alone. However, one could hear the agitation in Gohan's voice. This was because Gohan's words were not only for Zhao Hao's ears, but also for Gohan himself. Unlike Zhao Hao, who looked forward to proving himself and that Zhongyan's sword was still alive, Gohan actually hoped that Zhongyan's sword's soul did not exist. Otherwise, where would King Yu's soul go? They're right. Zhongyan's sword's soul is indeed not in those two broken swords. Unexpectedly, Zhao Hao agreed with the other three grandmasters' judgment. However, he then said, Zhongyan's sword's soul is not in Zhongyan's sword, but that doesn't mean that her soul has disappeared. Her soul is still alive. What do you mean? How is that possible? It's impossible for a sword lady's soul to exist in the air. Without the protection of the sword, her soul would have completely disintegrated in less than 10 seconds. Is there a problem with that? Gohan said in disbelief. That's right. It's true that a sword lady's soul can't exist in the air for more than 10 seconds, but who said that Zhongyan lady's soul dissipated in the air? Is there anyone who can prove this? Zhao Hao quickly said. No one can prove that, but no one can prove that Zhongyan lady's soul is still alive. Gohan answered stiffly. No. I can prove it. I can prove that Zhongyan lady's soul is still alive. Zhao Hao became even more agitated. How are you going to prove it? I can bring you to Zhongyan lady's soul. Isn't that the best proof? Zhao Hao grabbed Gohan with both hands. Then where do you think her soul is? Gohan glared at Zhao Hao. You have to give me enough reason to convince me. Otherwise, I'll treat it as something you made up to survive. Zhongyan lady's soul is in my scalpel. Zhao Hao answered without hesitation. Scalpel? Gohan was obviously stunned. Zhao Hao continued, It's all my fault. I shouldn't have forged a scalpel made of the same material as the Zhongyan sword so that I could cut Zhongyan lady's soul faster. At the moment of cutting, Zhongyan lady's soul was not distributed into the two broken swords as planned. Instead, it was transferred into the scalpel. It's all my fault. I was so angry that I thought I killed Zhongyan lady. I was in a state of confusion and didn't think of that at all. Zhao Hao's face was filled with regret. I only figured it out just now. Since the scalpel is made of the same material as the Zhongyan sword, Zhongyan lady's soul would naturally be transferred into the scalpel that was closest to her, and not the broken sword that was slightly further away. But the scalpel is just a small knife, and it's a knife. How can it be integrated with a sword lady's soul? Gohan mumbled to himself. The scalpel is just a term passed down from before the apocalypse. From its shape, both sides of the scalpel are sharp blades. It's completely different from a knife that has one thick side and one sharp side. Actually, the scalpel should be called a scalpel sword. Zhao Hao explained with a bitter smile. This was also how the academic world distinguished swords and knives after studying the existence of sword ladies for a long time. It explained why swords could become sword ladies, but not knives. P.S. Looking at it from a practical point of view, there are some who are double-edged. However, such knives are rare, so this book automatically ignores these rare knives. Here's the explanation. Now, there are two sword lady souls in the scalpel. This is a very dangerous thing. After being cut, the sword lady's soul has to be repaired by a soul-repairing fluid to regain its rationality. Otherwise, they will be like two wild beasts that will devour each other. One will only stop when the other is bitten to death. I suspect that the two souls in the scalpel are about to win. Once one of the souls fails, the other soul will definitely be pushed into the air. By then, both souls won't be able to survive, and Zhongyan lady will really die. Zhao Hao said anxiously at the end. Chapter 759. After Zhao Hao told him the entire story, Gohan believed half of it. This was because there were two sword ladies' souls hidden inside the Juzi sword, and King Yu's soul had also entered the other sword. As long as Juzi willed it, she could expel King Yu's soul from her body. This was almost the same as Zhongyan's sword's current predicament. However, on the other hand, Zhong Jian's sword's body was indeed empty. Zhong Jian's sword's soul was not in the sword. As long as Gohan hardened his heart, ignored Zhao Hao's words, and left with the broken Zhong Jian's sword, King Yu's soul would be able to reside in it without any problems. At the same time, it also announced the complete death of Zhong Jian's sword's soul. Zhao Hao told Gohan, although the scalpel was made of the same material as Zhong Jian's sword, it was ultimately a replica made by humans. Perhaps the soul could exist in it, but it could not transform into a real sword lady. Only by using the original sword lady's body and using humans to repair it would it be possible to create two sword ladies. Although Zhong Jian's sword's soul could stay in the scalpel for a while, as time passed, it would dissipate sooner or later. Therefore, if Gohan left with Zhong Jian's sword's body, King Yu might be able to be reborn, but Zhong Jian's sword's soul would definitely die. At that moment Gohan hesitated. He knew that his next move would completely determine King Yu's fate. Should he use Zhong Jian's sword's soul to dissipate in exchange for King Yu's rebirth, or should he give up on this rare opportunity and continue to wait like this for a lifetime? Sigh. Gohan sighed heavily in his heart, then asked Zhao Hao, "Where's your scalpel now?" "I don't know either," Zhao Hao said awkwardly. "After I was captured, all my things were confiscated by you. I have to ask the Sword Committee about my scalpel." Gohan stopped talking and immediately contacted Lu Shihua, who was far away in Yanjing City, through his personal terminal. He asked Lu Shihua to find the whereabouts of this batch of things. Very quickly, Lu Shihua replied. It turned out that Zhao Hao's original laboratory was an important piece of evidence, and no one dared to touch it. It was still there untouched. Therefore, Zhao Hao's scalpel should still be in that prison experiment. "Pack up and come with me to your lab now," Gohan said to Zhao Hao directly after the call with Lu Shihua. Gohan had to bring Zhao Hao along because other than Zhao Hao, Gohan did not know what to do next to redistribute the soul of the Zhongyan sword and the scalpel into the two broken swords. Moreover, Zhao Hao had already seen his true appearance. Once he found out that he was not a real prison guard, the fact that he had appeared in Mount Tai prison could no longer be concealed. Because of this, Gohan had to bring Zhao Hao along and lock him up somewhere. He would release him when the matter died down. He believed that Lu Lei would naturally help him deal with it, so Gohan did not have to worry too much. In Zhao Hao's eyes, Gohan must have been communicating with the Sword Committee just now. After obtaining the Sword Committee's approval, he would immediately bring him to the lab. Therefore, Zhao Hao did not doubt Gohan's orders at all. He simply packed up his things and left the prison cell with Gohan. Fortunately, when he brought Zhao Hao out of Mount Tai prison, no evil moths appeared. Everything went according to Gohan's plan. Under Lu Shihua's cover, they quietly left the heavily guarded Mount Tai prison. It was not until 5 or 6 hours later that Lu Shihua's remote control of Mount Tai prison ended. It was only then that the warden realized that Zhao Hao had disappeared from the prison. After that, the entire Mount Tai prison system was in a mess. More than 10 prison guards under the warden's rank were all fired. The few special forces also realized their wish to retire from the military. However, only God knew whether they became the personal special forces bodyguards of the city's beautiful campus belle. In fact, Gohan's actions that night could be summed up in one sentence. He went from one prison to another. However, compared to Mount Tai prison, the other prison's defense was practically non-existent. There were only a few police detectives guarding the entrance. Lu Shihua disguised himself slightly, and Gohan successfully brought him into its original lab. The rest of the matter went smoothly. Zhao Hao quickly found the scalpel on his table. Therefore, Zhao Hao immediately activated his soul-scanning equipment and began to scan the scalpel. He discovered that things were just as he had imagined. There were indeed 2 souls of Sword Maidens in the scalpel. Oh no! One of the Sword Maiden's soul is about to be squeezed out of the scalpel. Zhao Hao suddenly exclaimed. The smile on his face instantly disappeared, replaced by extreme anxiety. Just like what Zhao Hao had said earlier, the battle between the souls in the scalpel was about to end. One of the souls gradually showed signs of weakness, and was finally squeezed to the edge of the scalpel. Perhaps in a few minutes, this soul would be squeezed out of the scalpel and completely disappear into thin air. The other soul was not much better. In a situation where it had exhausted a large amount of soul power in the battle, and could not be replenished by the soul restoration fluid, this victorious soul would gradually disintegrate and disappear sooner or later. In other words, if Gohan had come a few minutes later, Zhong Dian's soul would definitely have died. It's over. Zhao Hao, who understood this scene, slumped to the ground, despair written all over his face. It's over. It's too late. I can't save these two souls. I'm a sinner through and through. What's wrong? Aren't the two souls still in the scalpel? Can't you separate them right now? Seeing Zhao Hao's despairing expression, Gohan asked in a puzzled manner. So what if they're separated? Zhao Hao said weakly. After they're separated, they have to be placed in their original broken sword fragment. I originally wanted to ask you to apply to the Sword Committee to bring the broken sword fragments here after confirming that the souls are in the scalpel. Only then can I separate them. But the speed of their battle far exceeded my expectations. I originally estimated that they would fight for at least another 2 days, but I didn't expect it to have already reached such a tragic stage. I'm useless, I'm the one who caused their deaths. Zhao Hao wailed, but suddenly felt something thrown on his leg. Zhao Hao looked down and saw that it was the remains of the 2 broken swords of Zhong Dian. Sir, how did this broken sword? You don't have to ask about that. Hurry up and separate the souls. You don't have time anymore. Hearing Gohan's words, Zhao Hao instantly jumped up from the ground. He grabbed the scalpel and rolled back to his workbench with the broken sword. Fortunately, in order to protect the scene, all the equipment in the entire workshop was not moved. Zhao Hao could immediately use these equipment that he was extremely familiar with to carry out his work. After working for about 20 minutes, Zhao Hao, who was fully focused, finally relaxed. He had successfully placed the 2 souls back into the broken sword, and Zhong Dian had regained its vitality. Seeing this scene, Gohan's eyes were filled with both joy and pain. He was naturally happy that the soul of a sword maiden had been redeemed by him. He was painful because when this sword body could not be used, when would the day of King Yu's rebirth be? Gohan sighed and prepared to leave the laboratory. Since Zhao Hao had already repaired Zhong Dian's soul, there was no need for Gohan to steal Zhong Dian's body. In this way, there was no need for Gohan to hide his identity. Gohan only needed to confess everything to his master, Liu Lei. He believed that with Liu Lei's help, he would be able to quickly fabricate the truth that Gohan had seen through the information that Zhong Dian's soul was not dead. Then, he would rush back to Yuzhong City to help repair Zhong Dian's body. Of course, this explanation was full of loopholes. Anyone with a bit of intelligence would be able to deduce that there were many things wrong with this explanation. However, the matter had a comedic ending. This was a family matter in Yuzhong City. Since Sword Immortal 9 Heavens Liu Lei, who was in charge of Yuzhong City, did not pursue this matter, outsiders could not say anything. Was it a bad thing for Gohan to save a sword maiden? Therefore, Gohan decided to leave. After explaining to Liu Lei that night, he would return to Yanjing City and continue looking for a chance to revive King Yu. Sir, where are you going? Gohan had just taken a step when he heard Zhao Hao ask anxiously behind him. Your matter is over, and there is no need for me to stay here. You can rest in the laboratory for a while. The Sword Committee will send someone else to deal with this matter soon. Gohan said to Zhao Hao plainly. Sir, you're not the real swordsman sent by the Sword Committee, right? Zhao Hao suddenly asked. That's right. Gohan admitted readily. He was not interested in how Zhao Hao discovered his identity. This was because he did not deliberately hide his actions along the way. As one of the 4 sword-forging grandmasters in Yuzhong City, Zhao Hao's intelligence was naturally higher than that of ordinary people. It was not surprising that he could discover his identity through some details. Then let me make a bold guess. Sir, you want to steal the broken sword of Zhong Dian? Zhao Hao said again. Yes. Gohan still admitted. Then let me ask one more thing. Sir, are you the sword-bearer of Zhong Dian? He thought Zhao Hao would keep guessing correctly, but he guessed wrong here. He actually guessed that Gohan was the sword-bearer of Zhong Dian. This was 1,000 miles wrong. Chapter 760. Sir, you're really devoted to Zhong Dian's sword lady. Zhao Hao exclaimed. Sir, you must be unwilling to see Zhong Dian's sword lady turn into a puddle of molten iron, so you want to steal her broken sword and keep it by your side forever, right? Zhao Hao had guessed that Gohan was the sword wielder of Zhong Dian's sword. It was not strange when one thought about it, because other than the sword wielder of Zhong Dian's sword, no one would take such a huge risk to steal a broken sword. Zhao Hao did not expect that someone would want to use the broken sword's sword mistress to be reborn as another sword mistress. From a certain point of view, this was even more despicable than Zhao Hao's research. Gohan did not answer Zhao Hao's question. His attitude of neither admitting nor denying confirmed Zhao Hao's guess. The sword wielder before him was undoubtedly the sword mistress of Zhong Dian's sword. However, Zhao Hao did not know that the real sword wielder of Zhong Dian's sword had already died in battle after Zhong Dian's sword broke. This sword wielder had been an ancient sword wielder for over 40 years. When Yuan Ko rushed out of the core zone's quantum teleportation formation, he did not show any fear, nor did he choose to escape. Instead, he stood closely with his sword mistress and used his life to compose a great song of praise for the sword wielder, although no one had ever sung this battle song, and no one really cared about this sword wielder's heroic battle. Why are you telling me this? Is there a reason? Gohan turned around and asked. Of course there's a reason. Zhao Hao nodded. I should have done my research without any hesitation, but without your help today, I'm afraid I've made a huge mistake. I'm afraid I've already made a huge mistake, so I have to tell you something and let you make a choice. What is it? I want to tell you that my research is already halfway done. Next, I only need to use the materials I prepared to repair these 2 broken swords. Then, I'll be able to obtain 2 identical sword mistresses of Zhong Dian's sword. That's great. Isn't that what you've always wanted? Gohan said. This is indeed what I want, but this isn't what you want, said Zhao Hao with a sigh. Once my experiment succeeds, Sword Lady Zhong Dian will be reborn. But if that's the case, the original Sword Lady of Zhong Dian will also disappear completely. The reborn Zhong Dian will have nothing to do with you, my lord. You have to synchronize again to become a Sword Lady. But Lady Zhong Dian's purple palace still has Lady Zhong Dian's sword mark. I think Lady Zhong Dian knows better than me what this means. Gohan chose to remain silent. He knew what Zhao Hao wanted to express. After the wielder's sword lady was broken, the sword scar in the wielder's purple palace would not disappear. In other words, the wielder would not be able to synchronize with the ancient sword-grade sword lady. In vulgar terms, this was called being a dog in the manger, and this occupation was the life of the sword-bearer. If Gohan was really the wielder of the sword of final destination, then there were only 2 paths in front of Gohan. He could either send the sword of final destination to the sword burial ground and wait for it to slowly recover, or he could find a sword-forging grandmaster and ask them to find a way to repair the sword of final destination. If he really followed Zhao Hao's plan and split the sword of final destination into 2 independent entities, even if the sword of final destination was reborn, it would no longer have any connection with its wielder. The wielder would also lose his ancient sword-grade sword lady forever. That was why Zhao Hao wanted to ask Gohan about Gohan's decision at this juncture. Unfortunately, Gohan was not the wielder of the sword of final destination, so there was nothing for him to worry about. He said straightforwardly, "Just do it according to your plan. If you really succeed, it will be the fortune of the entire human race. You don't have to worry about these small things." Lord is so righteous. I, Zhao Hao, admire you. Hearing Gohan's words, Zhao Hao sincerely admired Gohan. From the time Gohan had snuck into Mount Tai prison to steal the sword of final destination, Zhao Hao could tell that Gohan had deep feelings for the sword of final destination. However, with such deep feelings, when faced with the overall situation of the entire human race, Gohan had decisively given up on his own interests and chosen the interests of the human race. How could Zhao Hao not admire this? Haha. Actually, Lord, you don't have to give up like this. I, Zhao Hao, have a way to let you be together with the Sword Lady of Final Destination again. It turned out that Zhao Hao was just messing around with Gohan. Now, he was telling Gohan that he already had a solution to the problem. What idea do you have? It's very simple. Since I, Zhao Hao, can split the Sword Lady of Final Destination's soul, I can put them back together, Zhao Hao said with a smile. But if you put the soul back together, what will happen to your research? Gohan asked. The research can still continue. Zhao Hao laughed. Actually, my most important goal is to prove that the two swords of final destination made from my special materials are the same as the real sword of final destination. They can both become the bodies of natural sword ladies. Later, I'll fuse the Lady of Final Destination's soul back together and place it into one of the broken swords. Then, I'll use the materials I've developed to successfully repair this short sword. If this repaired broken sword can reconnect with the Lady of Final Destination's sword mark in your hands and become a sword lady, it will prove that my research has succeeded. At the same time, I can return the Lady of Final Destination to you. Isn't that killing two birds with one stone? Zhao Hao said with a proud expression. He was waiting for Gohan to thank him. However, Zhao Hao didn't know that his words had a completely different meaning in Gohan's ears. If it was really as Zhao Hao said, and only one of the two broken swords was used for the rebirth of the Sword of Final Destination, didn't that mean that after the other broken sword was repaired, it would become an empty body, perfect for King Yu to use? Good. Good idea. Gohan revealed a pleading expression. Lord Grandmaster, I'll leave everything to you. Can you repair it now? I can't stay here for too long, or else I'll be locked up in the disciplinary committee. You've done me a favor, this is nothing, Zhao Hao said with a smile. He seemed to think of something, and his expression suddenly became extremely awkward. This might really have to wait a little longer. Although it's easier to fuse the souls again than to cut them apart, it requires an extremely important item, which is the soul restoration fluid. I must use the soul restoration fluid to strengthen the two souls that are already extremely weak, and use the soul restoration fluid as a dissolving agent so that the two souls can slowly fuse together in the soul restoration fluid. But the Sword Committee only gives me one bottle of soul recovery fluid every year, and I've already used the bottle this year. I'm afraid it'll take some effort to get another bottle. Can you wait a few more days? No, wait a few more weeks? Zhao Hao smiled bitterly. The soul restoration fluid was actually the soul restoration fluid, which was the crucial fluid that Maiden had used for her rebirth. It was just that the swordsmiths and the doctors had different names for it. The soul restoration fluid was extremely rare, and there were not many bottles produced in the entire Yuzhong city in a year. Only a grandmaster swordsmith like Zhao Hao had a quota of one bottle every year, and it was extravagantly used as a research material. Other swordsmiths could not even dream of seeing it. If Zhao Hao wanted to get another bottle, forget about a few weeks, he might not even be able to get one in a few months. How could Gohan have the time to wait for him for a few weeks? Hence, Gohan directly took out a bottle of soul restoration fluid from his dimensional bag and placed it in front of Zhao Hao. Hurry up, I'm in a hurry. This bottle of soul restoration fluid was given to Gohan by Lu Lei to replenish the portion of soul restoration fluid that had already been used in the Immortal Sword grade medical pod. Unfortunately, things were urgent, so Gohan could only give this bottle of soul restoration fluid to Zhao Hao. Sir, who exactly are you? Only then did Zhao Hao realize that the swordsmiths in front of him had an extraordinary status in Yuzhong City. What swordsmiths could casually take out a bottle of soul restoration fluid from their dimensional bag? At the very least, they had to be a direct descendant or successor of an emperor swordsman. Zhao Hao did not say anything else, nor did he ask any more questions. He picked up the bottle of soul restoration fluid and immediately started working. Not only did Zhao Hao need to reintegrate the two souls, but he also needed to use the forging electric furnace in the workshop to repair the two broken swords with the materials he had made himself into two complete swordsmiths. By the time all this work was done, the sky had already brightened. Sounds of footsteps could be heard from around the laboratory. This was the prison guards on duty. They would soon discover that the previously closed laboratory had begun working again. Oh no! Why are the lights in the laboratory lit up? Everyone be on guard! A warning cry came from outside the laboratory. It seemed that they had discovered the situation here. Sir, fortunately I did not disappoint you. At this moment, Zhao Hao placed the two brand new Zhongyan swords in front of Gohan. Gohan carefully observed the two Zhongyan swords, and found that one of them was no different from a normal natural swordsmith. It was full of life. The other one was much duller, without the slightest trace of life. It was not even comparable to a man-made ship Maiden. Clearly, this was the soulless sword suitable for the king of Yu's body. As expected of Grandmaster Tianri, your swordsmithing skills leave me speechless. Gohan praised sincerely. I wouldn't dare. Zhao Hao smiled. Sir, you'd better escape quickly. Otherwise, when the prison guards rush in, your identity will be exposed. No. I want you to leave with me. For some reason, Gohan suddenly changed his mind and wanted to bring Grandmaster Tianri Zhao Hao along. Don't worry about me. These prison guards won't dare to do anything to me. Zhao Hao gestured for him not to worry. Anyway, the Zhongyan swords have already been repaired. No matter how big a mistake I made, I don't deserve to die. At most, I'll return to Mount Tai prison and stay for a few years. Just leave me here. Hurry up and leave. Sorry. Unfortunately, Gohan did not want to waste any more words with Zhao Hao. A sword chi struck Zhao Hao's Fengqi acupoint, and Zhao Hao instantly fainted. Gohan carried Zhao Hao, and the moment the prison guards rushed into the laboratory, he ran away with Zhao Hao. Before the prison guards could even see his figure clearly, Gohan had already left the prison. Chapter 761. He still doesn't want to eat? A middle-aged man with black hair mixed with half of his white hair asked a woman beside him who was holding a plate of steaming hot rice. Sigh. The woman shook her head. Child's father, I think it's better to call the doctor over again and let them give the little horse another nutrient injection. Otherwise, the child's body won't be able to take it. The doctor already said that it's not good to give too many nutrient injections. If the child's stomach function deteriorates, it will be even more troublesome. The middle-aged man took the plate of food from the woman's hands and cursed, F***ck, I'll personally deliver it to him. If he doesn't eat, I'll break his legs. Dad, you're wrong. Big brother isn't even afraid of death right now. Why would he be afraid of you breaking his legs? An 11 or 12-year-old little girl beside the man happily said heartlessly. She didn't seem to feel the pain of her big brother who was on a hunger strike. Ding dong. At this time, the doorbell rang. The mother hurriedly went to the door and opened the video surveillance on the door. She saw a young man standing at the door of their house. Who is it? Why did he come here so early in the morning? The middle-aged man said with some dissatisfaction. It wasn't even 8 a.m. yet. What kind of guest would choose this time to come and visit? It's little Han. Little Han is here. The mother looked at the surveillance and said with a pleasant surprise. You're saying that Gohan is here? The man's expression was also happy. I heard that he went to Yanjing City to participate in some competition. Why would he suddenly come to our house? All right, Dad. Hurry up and open the door. As long as Big Brother Gohan is here, stupid brother will eat. The little girl said excitedly. She was especially excited about Gohan's arrival. That's right, the person standing at the door of this house was Gohan. I believe that everyone has already guessed that this house wasn't someone else. It was the house of Gohan's childhood sweetheart, Song Hama. Song Hama's house was the only place where Gohan could receive the warmth of a family. Therefore, the relationship between Gohan and Song Hama's family was especially good. Papa Song. Mama Song. Sorry to disturb you so early. As soon as the door opened, Gohan said to Song Hama's family with a smile. This kind of smile that was as warm as the spring breeze, this kind of smile with the warmth of family, was a smile that Gohan would rarely show even in front of his sword ladies. Child, what do you mean by disturbing? This is your home. Why are you treating me like an outsider? Mama Song intimately pulled Gohan into her embrace and pinched Gohan's face, waist, buttocks, and hands. Then, she nodded with satisfaction. Your flesh is still there. It seems that you've taken good care of yourself these days. I'm relieved. Little Han. Didn't I remember you participating in the 8 Academies assembly? Could it be that the competition was already over? Calculating the time, it doesn't seem right. Compared to Mother Song's intimacy, Papa Song was a lot colder. However, the concern he had for Gohan couldn't be concealed from his words. The competition hasn't started yet. I discovered something at the last minute and rushed back from Yanjing City. The first thing I did was to look for Papa Song and Mama Song. Gohan spoke 30% of the truth and 70% of the lies. Did you say that you came back alone? Papa Song was taken aback. Then, he said in a reproachful tone, it must have been a dangerous journey. How could you go out alone? You should be moving with everyone. Smelly old man, what do you know? Mama Song rolled her eyes at Papa Song. Little Han is already a famous swordsman and the master of our Yuzhong City's sword pavilion. This means that our little Han is one of the best in Yuzhong City. What's the big deal about going back and forth by himself? Perhaps he can even bring us to Yanjing City to take a look. All right. If I bring you there, who knows how much trouble you'll cause for little Han? Papa Song sneered. Then, he looked at Gohan and said, Little Han, you didn't rush here just to take a look at us, right? Why did you come looking for us? Papa Song. How is Toad now? Is he any better? Gohan worriedly looked at Song Hama's room. How else could he be? He's still the same as the day you came to see him. No matter what I say, he still refuses to eat and wants to starve himself to death. Little Han, you came at the right time. Quickly help me persuade Toad. Our whole family is suffering because of him. It's better not to be a swordsman anymore. Our lives won't be as good as before, Papa Song said in a sorrowful tone. After the trial ended, Gohan came to Song Hama's house many times. At first, Song Hama didn't even want to see Gohan. Later, he couldn't stand it anymore and Gohan barged into his room. Only after Song Hama tried everything he could to convince him to eat 1 or 2 meals, but those were the only 2 meals that Song Hama ate. After Gohan left Yanjing City, Song Hama once again went on a hunger strike. Even now, he still had to rely on the doctor to forcefully inject him with nutrients to save his life. It's all right. Actually, I came this time because of Toad. Toad's heart disease needs medicine to be cured. This time, I brought the medicine with me. After saying this much, Guhan pulled someone in from the door. It was the unconscious Zhao Hao. Little Han, who is this? Papa Song was startled and asked in fear. This is the medicine I was talking about, Guhan replied with a smile. However, this made Papa Song even more afraid. Little Han, have you been bewitched? This is a human, how can it be used as medicine? You must have practiced too much and become muddle-headed. Papa Song's words almost made Guhan vomit blood. What era was this? How could there be such a thing as using a human as medicine? I'm saying that this person has a way to cure Toad's heart disease. Guhan's sword chi touched Zhao Hao's acupoint, and the unconscious Zhao Hao slowly woke up. Is this person a psychiatrist? Papa Song asked out of curiosity. What psychiatrist? I'm a master sword forging master. After hearing Papa Song's words, the drowsy Zhao Hao immediately stood up and refuted. In this life, he hated doctors the most. He absolutely couldn't be confused with doctors. Master sword forging master? How can he cure Toad's heart disease? Papa Song was even more confused. Papa Song. Toad is on a hunger strike because the cloud cast iron is broken. If the cloud cast iron can be repaired, the Toad will definitely return to normal. Papa Song suddenly realized that Guhan was planning to cure Song Hama's heart disease from the root. Papa Song, let's not talk anymore. I'll immediately bring Grandmaster Tianri to look for Toad. After saying this much, Guhan pulled the confused Zhao Hao to the door of Song Hama's room. After pushing the door, he discovered that it was still locked. I'll go get the key. Just as Papa Song was about to get the key to Song Hama's room, Guhan inserted his sword chi into the keyhole, and the lock opened. It was even more convenient than using the key. Thank the heavens! It's really good that Toad had a childhood friend like Little Cold. After seeing Guhan anxiously bringing Zhao Hao into Song Hama's room, Mama Song finally revealed a smile after so many days. What are you talking about? What do you mean childhood friends? How can you use childhood friends to describe a relationship between two men? Papa Song said discontentedly. TSK, what do you know? Childhood friends aren't even as close as our Toad and Little Cold. Why can't I use childhood friends? After entering Song Hama's room, the originally tall, big, and somewhat fat Song Hama looked as though he had changed into another person. His body was as thin as a matchstick, and the skin on his face was sticking to his bones. His lips were pale and dry. From the looks of it, his body was in a very bad state. If things continued like this, Song Hama might die in a few years due to mental and physical exhaustion. At this time, Song Hama was sitting on a chair. When he saw Guhan forcefully breaking the door open, he raised his eyelids, and his expression finally changed. He opened his mouth, seemingly wanting to say something. But in the end, Song Hama still shut his mouth and maintained a deathly silence. The nearby Zhao Hao, who was feeling somewhat awkward, suddenly discovered that the person sitting on the chair was holding a broken sword maiden in his bosom. After studying sword maidens for dozens of years, Zhao Hao immediately recognized that it was an innate sword maiden. Interesting. At this time, Zhao Hao's work instincts surged. He immediately stepped forward, wanting to take a closer look at the broken cloud-cast iron in Song Hama's bosom. What are you trying to do? Nobody is allowed to touch my cloud-cast iron. After seeing that Zhao Hao wanted to touch his sword maiden, Song Hama finally became agitated. He punched Zhao Hao's chest, wanting to push him away. Stop! After seeing this scene, Guhan used his sword chi to block. However, his target wasn't Zhao Hao, but Song Hama, who was trying to push Zhao Hao away. With Guhan's help, Zhao Hao smoothly grabbed the broken cloud-cast iron. On the other hand, Song Hama was tightly bound by Guhan's sword chi, unable to budge. Sour popsicle, what are you trying to do? Let me go. Nobody is allowed to touch my cloud-cast iron. Song Hama shouted crazily. His voice was so loud and painful that even Papa Song and Mama Song, who were outside the living room, could hear him clearly. Mama Song instinctively wanted to rush in to help her son, but she was grabbed by Papa Song, who was behind her. "Believe in little Han. He won't harm the toad," Papa Song said firmly. "Sir Tienri, do you think this cloud-cast iron can still be saved?" After waiting for a few minutes, Gohan asked Zhao Hao, who was carefully examining the cloud-cast iron. "Using traditional methods, it's impossible to save this cloud-cast iron unless we find a great master. We can only throw it in the sword burial land and wait for it to recover on its own." After saying this much, Zhao Hao suddenly revealed a complacent smile. "But if we use my new method, that might not be the case. I'm at least 70% sure that I can save this cloud-cast iron." Chapter 762. What did you say? Song Hama, who had been frantically struggling, suddenly froze. He was not deaf, and naturally heard Zhao Hao's words clearly. "I said that I have a 70% chance of saving this cast cloud iron." Zhao Hao repeated his own words. "Is what you said true?" Hearing Zhao Hao's words, hot tears suddenly flowed down Song Hama's skinny face. The tears uncontrollably flowed down his face like a waterfall. "Sour popsicle. Let go of me. Let go of me. Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything to this master. I'm going to kneel before this master. Let go of me," Song Hama said emotionally. Thus, Gohan loosened the sword chi binding Song Hama's body. Song Hama knelt in front of Zhao Hao and kowtowed as if his life depended on it. "Master, if you can save this cast cloud iron, I, Song Hama, will never forget your great kindness." "Well said, well said." Zhao Hao helped Song Hama up. "Since you're Lord Gohan's friend, you're my friend as well. Moreover, this is my job to begin with. Helping you repair this sword Maiden is not a problem." "Thank you, Master." Song Hama's tears flowed even more quickly. These were tears of joy and excitement. It's fine. Zhao Hao smiled, "However, you might have to wait for a few more months. I first need to carefully study the cast cloud iron's material, then create a material that is exactly the same as the cast cloud iron itself. Only then can I start repairing it. This will take at least 3 months, so you'll have to wait patiently." "Let alone 3 months, even if it's 3 years or 30 years, I'm willing to wait." Song Hama was so excited that he could not speak clearly. As long as the cast cloud iron could be revived, he was willing to wait as many days as it took. Although Song Hama had no objections, 3 months felt like a long time to Gohan. From the looks of it, Zhao Hao was not following the original path of repairing a broken sword. Instead, he planned to use the materials he had concocted to repair the cast cloud iron into 2 sword ladies. This was a completely new method, and no one knew if it would succeed. The Zhongyan sword that he had repaired previously had not been synchronized, so no one knew if it would be successfully repaired. Thus, Gohan did not intend to use the method that Zhao Hao had researched to repair the cast cloud iron. "Grandmaster Tienri, 3 months is too long. Do you have any other way to quickly repair the cloud cast iron?" Gohan asked. "Quickly repair the cloud cast iron?" Zhao Hao frowned. "The cloud cast iron is different from the Zhongyan sword. This is a giant sword forged from meteoric iron. Meteoric iron comes from space. The composition of iron is very strange, and there are many different trace elements. It will take me at least 3 months to completely analyze the material of the cast cloud iron. I say, Comrade Gohan, there are some things that should not be rushed. You can't drink hot soybean milk if you are impatient." "That's right, Sour Popsicle. 3 months is already good enough. There's no need to bring it forward. I have the patience to wait," Song Hama said. "Then let me ask you this. Grandmaster Tienri, can you use the old method to repair this cloud cast iron?" Gohan asked. "I can't. Zhao Hao's face turned red. If I could do it, I wouldn't be Grandmaster Tianri. I would be Grandmaster Tianri. Then let me ask again. If I use the furnace of heaven and earth, can I repair this cloud-cast iron? Gohan asked again. What? What did you say? Tell me what you said about that furnace again. Zhao Hao suddenly grabbed Gohan's hand and asked in a very excited and hurried manner. I'm talking about the furnace of heaven and earth. If I use the furnace of heaven and earth, can I use the old method to repair this cloud-cast iron? Gohan repeated. The furnace of heaven and earth. You actually know about the furnace of heaven and earth. Grandmaster Tianri muttered to himself. If I use the furnace of heaven and earth, it might really be possible. But the furnace of heaven and earth hasn't been activated for hundreds of years. It needs a lot of sovereign blood. Gohan took the initiative to speak for Zhao Hao. Don't worry about the sovereign blood. I've already obtained enough sovereign blood to activate the furnace of heaven and earth. Who are you? Who are you? Even if Lord Lu Lei was here, he might not be able to gather enough sovereign blood to activate the furnace of heaven and earth. It's not just Lord Lu Lei. In this world, perhaps only the Lu Nian family has such a reserve. Who are you? How can you gather so much sovereign blood? Zhao Hao's expression was like that of a frightened child. You don't need to know who I am. All you need to know is that I have so much sovereign blood. You just need to answer me. Can you or can you not? Can you use the furnace of heaven and earth to repair the cloud-cast iron? Gohan pressed. Yes. Absolutely. Zhao Hao's eyes instantly lit up. The furnace of heaven and earth is the greatest power in the world. Let alone a mere ancient sword lady, it's said that even if a sovereign sword lady is broken, it can be repaired in the furnace of heaven and earth. It's said that a sovereign sword lady like that was repaired in the furnace of heaven and earth. However, I don't know which sovereign sword lady it was. Then there's nothing more to say. Stinky Toad, pack up. We'll leave now. Gohan turned and said to Song Hama. Where are we going? Where are you taking me? Song Hama was in a state of confusion. He had no idea what Gohan was talking about, nor did he know what the furnace of heaven and earth was, nor did he know where Gohan was taking him. You don't need to worry about that. Just follow me. Do you think I'd harm you? After Gohan spoke, Song Hama instantly lost his temper. He jumped up from his original position and started to pack his things. Zhao Hao suddenly moved closer to Gohan, a flattering expression on his face. Gohan, are you going to activate the furnace of heaven and earth now? That's right. Gohan nodded. Then can you bring me along? Zhao Hao's expression became even more flattering. To a sword-forging grandmaster, the furnace of heaven and earth was an irresistible temptation. To be able to personally see the furnace of heaven and earth forge a treasured sword, even if Zhao Hao died, it would be worth it. Actually, it's not that easy to activate the furnace of heaven and earth. It requires a lot of professional skills, let alone something as important as repairing the cloud-cast iron. Master Gohan, please believe me. Bringing me along will definitely not go wrong. Zhao Hao said excitedly and started to sell himself. All right then. Gohan nodded. In fact, Gohan had originally planned to bring Zhao Hao along. After all, Gohan did not have any experience in repairing the sword mistress in the furnace of heaven and earth. If something went wrong, he would not even know how to fix it. Therefore, if possible, Gohan wanted to bring a sword-forging grandmaster along. Zhao Hao had volunteered himself. Who else could Gohan bring if not him? Mom, I need to go out with Sour Popsicle. I'll be gone for about 4 to 5 days. Don't worry about me. Right? Hurry up and prepare some food for me. I'm starving to death. The worried Papa Song and Mama Song were looking at the door and guessing what was happening inside. They were guessing whether or not that sword-forging master would be able to cure Song Hama's illness. At the very least, Song Hama should be able to eat something first. However, they did not expect that the doctor would be so effective. Song Hama, who hadn't left his room for more than 10 days, suddenly jumped out on his own. Moreover, he was in high spirit. He even said that he was starving to death and wanted to eat. This made Papa Song and Mama Song very happy. The food that they had just heated up was quickly brought out. Song Hama immediately started to wolf down the food. Good. Very good. That stinky toad finally. Seeing her son wolf down the food, Mama Song couldn't help but cry tears of joy. Sparkling and translucent tears flowed out of her eyes. That's a good thing. Why are you crying? Papa Song's eyes also became moist. What are you doing here? Quickly take out the fat goose from the fridge. This toad loves to eat braised goose. I'll go right away. Mama Song immediately went to the kitchen to take out a fat goose. However, she was stopped by Gohan, who was just about to leave the room. Mama Song, you don't need to cook anymore. The toad and I are about to leave, and we don't have enough time. Leave? Where are you going? Mama Song asked, puzzled. The toad's illness has just been cured. He needs to rest at home for a few days before leaving. The toad's illness can only be cured after leaving this room. Trust me, I won't harm the toad, Gohan said sincerely. But Mama Song wanted to say something, but was stopped by Papa Song. Just listen to Little Han. Little Han won't harm the toad. The toad has been staying at home for a long time. It's time for it to see the sunlight outside. Last night, around 8 or 9 p.m., Gohan brought fleeting time Lena back to Yuzhong City through the small door. But this morning, at 8 or 9 o'clock, before 12 hours had passed, Gohan had left Yuzhong City through this small door again. This time, however, there were 2 more people with Gohan. One of them was Zhao Hao, who had an excited expression on his face, and the other was Song Hama, who had no idea what to do. When Gohan brought Zhao Hao and Song Hama to board his flying droplet car, the 2 of them were once again thoroughly shocked. Song Hama's shock was simply because of the cool features of the flying droplet car. It was like a person in the early 90s who suddenly saw an iPhone 7 Plus while holding a mobile phone. On the other hand, Zhao Hao's shock was not as simple as that. As a blacksmith, he was also a scientist. Zhao Hao was even more aware of the technological significance behind the flying car than Gohan. Therefore, Gohan's image in Zhao Hao's heart became more and more mysterious. Chapter 763. The Furnace of Heaven and Earth was about 300 kilometers away from Yuzhong City. Although they encountered a few Yuan Kos along the way, they still arrived at the mysterious, naturally formed Furnace of Heaven and Earth smoothly. This was the first time Gohan had seen the Furnace of Heaven and Earth in the real world. It was exactly the same as the Furnace of Heaven and Earth in the Instance Dungeon. This Furnace of Heaven and Earth was an extremely large basin. The basin was filled with sand and stones, and there was not a single tree or blade of grass in sight. There was no life in the basin at all. However, the Furnace of Heaven and Earth was surrounded by lush trees and vegetation. There were even wild animals scurrying about in the forest. It was a completely different scene from the desert-like Furnace of Heaven and Earth. The moment they arrived at the Furnace of Heaven and Earth, Gohan really wanted to immediately start King Yu's rebirth forging. Unfortunately, this could not be done immediately because there was another thing in the Furnace of Heaven and Earth. More accurately speaking, it was not a thing, but a Yuan Ko covered in flames. This Yuan Ko silently sat at the center of the Furnace of Heaven and Earth. He closed his eyes and meditated like a monk, as if he was comprehending the mysteries of the Furnace of Heaven and Earth. This Yuan Ko's position was very awkward. It happened to be at the center of the Furnace of Heaven and Earth, where Gohan was going to pour in the sovereign blood to restart the Furnace of Heaven and Earth. Then, he would place the broken sword so that King Yu and the cloud-cast iron could repair it. This way, Gohan would have to kill this Yuan Ko, or else he would not be able to repair it. In fact, even if this Yuan Ko was not there, Gohan would still kill this Yuan Ko. This was the fate of the sword-bearer and Yuan Ko. Why is that person's body on fire? Could it be that there is fuel stored in his body? Song Hama asked in puzzlement when he saw the flaming man. I told you to pay attention in class, or else you wouldn't not know the famous Yuan Ko, Flame of Vengeance brand. Gohan rolled his eyes at Song Hama. What? This person is the Flame of Vengeance brand? Song Hama was shocked. Her finger was trembling slightly as she pointed at Brand. This was because Brand's reputation was too great, and the sins he had committed were too great for humans. Yuan Ko's name: Vengeful Spirit Brand. Level: Meteor 2-dimensional world. Digital World Yuan Ko faction. League of Legends. HP 5 stars. Attack 8 stars. Agility 5 stars. Magic power 8 stars. Ability: Brand's body is burning with flames. His only ability is to control these flames to avenge him. He could make the ground burn with a pillar of fire that soared into the sky, and he could also make people's bodies turn naturally. He could even shoot out flames that continuously shot between enemies. These were all very powerful offensive abilities. Ultimate move: Raging Flame Pillar, Raging Flame Burning, Raging Flame Storm. Introduction: A demonic half-human that exists in a 2-dimensional digital game created by humans. They call themselves heroes. Because these people who like to call themselves heroes all came from the same 2-dimensional world, they formed one of the top 10 factions in Yuan Ko, the League of Legends. Although Flame Spirit of Vengeance Brand belonged to the League of Legends, he was ostracized by some of the League of Legends members due to his blood feud with the Yodel people in the League of Legends. He preferred to be alone and rarely had friends or helpers by his side. If you discover Brand, the Flame of Vengeance, please seriously evaluate your own strength. 4 sword wielders below Immortal Sword tier. Unless they were at the pinnacle of Spirit Sword tier and possessed a certain level of fire resistance, they should never engage in battle with Bullet. Otherwise, they would experience the fear of fire. Battle record: Brand is Yuan Ko, who hates humans to the extreme. Once he finds a human, he will attack without hesitation. Since his appearance 300 years ago, there have been 721 recorded battles. Among them, 320 were against ancient sword-grade sword wielders, 261 against treasured sword-grade sword wielders, 145 against famed sword-grade sword wielders, 70 against spiritual sword-grade sword wielders, and 21 against immortal sword-grade sword wielders. Battle results: Ancient sword-grade sword wielder successfully escaped 123 times, treasured sword-grade sword wielder escaped 132 times, famed sword-grade sword wielder escaped 104 times, spiritual sword-grade sword wielder 123 times, lost 45 times, immortal sword-grade sword wielder 120 times, lost 1 time, and died. Battle suggestion: If you encounter Brand, please escape immediately if you are below spiritual sword grade. Brand's pursuit ability is not strong. Even if you are an ancient sword grade sword wielder, as long as you find a way to escape into the river, you will be able to preserve your own life. Also, please do not try to start a group battle with Brand. Brand's Raging Flame Storm has a terrifying effect in group battles. The more people there are, the more powerful it will be. It is better to fight it alone. Song Hama looked at the information on Brand on his personal terminal again, and couldn't help but click his tongue. From this information, it could be seen that this Brand had a terrifying ability to crush sword wielders below spiritual sword grade. His fatality rate was actually more than 60%. Moreover, when facing spiritual sword grade sword wielders of the same level, Brand was still able to maintain a 70% winning rate. He had even killed 2 spiritual sword grade sword wielders, which showed how terrifying his strength was. This was only the information recorded on his personal terminal. What left the deepest impression on Song Hama was the battle on Mount Zhongtiao more than 100 years ago. On that day, a team of more than 20 famed sword-bearers had encountered Brand, the Flame of Vengeance. This team of sword-wielders had an extremely powerful sword formation. With this formation, they could even fight with Grade Yuan Ko for more than 10 minutes and escape unscathed. This team of sword-wielders became famous and became influential figures at that time. However, it was this team of sword-wielders that could fight with Grade Yuan Ko, but when they faced Brand, they encountered the biggest disaster since the formation of the team. Among the 25 famed sword-grade sword-wielders, only 8 people escaped from Mount Zhongtiao. The other 17 people stayed there forever. Out of the 8 people who had been rescued, 6 of them had been afflicted with a phobia of fire. Once they saw fire, they would be as terrified as a mouse seeing a cat. They would cower in a corner and wail. These 6 famed sword-rank sword-bearers were completely crippled. Among the 8 people, the other 2 people survived and became active on the battlefield again. Later, one of them became an immortal sword-grade sword-wielder. As soon as he became an immortal sword-grade sword-wielder, he carried his immortal sword-grade sword-mistress and searched the world for traces of Brand. He swore to kill Brand to avenge his brother. In the end, this immortal sword-grade sword-wielder encountered Brand 6 times. Although he fought with all his strength each time and defeated Brand each time, Brand still escaped. When this immortal sword-grade sword-wielder died, he muttered to his descendants to find a way to kill Brand and eliminate this scourge for humanity. Unfortunately, this immortal sword-grade sword-wielder's descendants did not live up to expectations. Since then, they disappeared in the river of history. There was no news of them ever again. Because of this immortal sword-grade sword-wielder's persistent pursuit, Brand was also heavily injured. Especially in the last battle with Brand, it was said that Brand was so miserable that only his eyes could not withstand the flames. The flames on the other parts of his body were all extinguished. If it was not for the strength of Demacia, Garen, and the radiant Maiden, Larks, siblings from the League of Legends, who arrived in time, Brand would have died in the hands of this immortal sword-grade sword-wielder. Although Bulat had luckily escaped with his life, it was said that Bulat was on his last breath. He had disappeared for almost 100 years and had never appeared in front of humans again. Who would have thought that he was actually hiding in the furnace of heaven and earth? However, on second thought, otherwise, it was reasonable that he would hide in the furnace of heaven and earth. This was because the furnace of heaven and earth was the place in the whole world where the flames of heaven and earth were the most vigorous. For Yuan Ko, which was made of pure fire elements like Brand, the place with the most vigorous flames was the best place for him to be injured. Therefore, the furnace of heaven and earth became the best place for him to heal his injuries. Gohan, let's retreat a little and then report Brand's situation to Yuzhong City. Ask Yuzhong City to send a spirit sword-grade sword-wielder to deal with Brand. We can just watch the show from the side. Song Hama said to retreat a little, but in fact, he was advising Gohan to escape. According to the advice given to Song Hama on his personal terminal, the best method at this time was indeed to escape. If you encounter Flame of Vengeance Brand, please escape immediately if you are below Spirit Sword grade. These were the original words on his personal terminal. It was an order given by the Sword Committee to the sword wielder. Song Hama naturally had a clear conscience in escaping. Song Hama could escape, but Gohan could not. This was the furnace of heaven and earth. If Brand stayed here to heal, what would happen to Gohan? If Brand stayed here for another 100 years, would Gohan have to wait for him for another 100 years? Of course, Gohan could also call for support from Yuzhong City. If 2 or 3 spirit sword-grade sword-bearers came, they would be able to drive Brand out. But in this way, Gohan's purpose would also be exposed. The furnace of heaven and earth would have to become the focus of the whole Yuzhong City, and Gohan's behavior would also be exposed to everyone. More importantly, after the big attack, Gohan had never really fought with Yuan Ko again. Gohan now wanted to know, after having 2 times more sword elements than at that time, after using the most powerful famous sword, the Juzi sword of Sword Maiden, and after roughly mastering the chaos swordsmanship that he created, how far had Gohan's strength grown? Before this, Gohan could defeat the nether-grade Yuan Ko Archer Sage when he fought with all his strength. However, the Archer Sage was not a strong opponent among the nether-grade Yuan Ko. Ordinary Spirit Sword grade sword bearers could also defeat the Archer Sage. And at this time, Brand, who stayed in the furnace of heaven and earth, was indeed a very difficult opponent among the meteor-grade Yuan Ko. In the Yuan Ko list published by Humans, Brand was also ranked in the top 50 among the meteor-grade Yuan Ko. If Gohan could defeat such an opponent, then under the U grade, there would be no Yuan Ko that could defeat Gohan. This was a battle that even Gohan himself was not sure of the outcome. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.